You want to call up?
I can if you.
Okay, that's fine.
Way to inspire.
Whenever you're ready.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm gonna call this evening's operations work group. We have a few folks who are joining us for public comment tonight, so that is where we'll start.
All right, the first public comment is Luke Angler. You can come up to this chair. That's Mark.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Luke Angler. I know some of the faces here. Those of you I don't know, I'm a bilingual resource teacher at La Follette High School. And I work largely with our newcomer multilingual students. And first off, congratulations on the news of possible more state funding. Be relevant to the comments as well. That's very exciting. I want to focus my comments on food service and the Second Chance Breakfast program at La Follette, which for those of you who don't know is an opportunity for students to get breakfast if they are late to school or if they don't get their breakfast in time before class starts. It's something that a couple of hundred students more or less utilize every day at La Follette. So a lot of students are eating food that they wouldn't otherwise eat from this program. So I just want to emphasize how important this is and how well it might look like just a line item somewhere is a lot of students eating a lot of food today. I know you all care about that already. Just want to emphasize that these students really rely on this program, and they're students who a lot of the students who are Second Chance Breakfast are also asking for snacks throughout the day. It's not enough in and of itself, but it's vital, and it's really, I think it's a really successful program. The other thing, I know that it's a complex issue budget-wise potentially. I think that it's really important that we don't degrade other aspects of food service and trying to go about keeping Second Chance Breakfast. I know that that budget is really difficult, and historically it's been managed almost business-like, trying to balance Fund 50 itself. And I guess I would just encourage the board to consider funding using general funds, at least for this year, to be fully staffed, to be able to accommodate all the services that we currently have now. And I know that people are uncomfortable with that, but ultimately what's important is that students have the food that they need to be able to learn. And if there are other cuts to quality or whatnot, if there's other solutions that we explore, next year's budget could be even harder, because if it is run in a way where we need to make back the money from the students and the quality goes down, then fewer students are going to buy lunch, and then it just creates this issue over and over again. So I think invest in food service and make sure that our students have what they need. That's my. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ben Ratliff. Apologies if I mispronounced.
No, you got it. Thank you. That's actually rare.
Ooh,
Good job. Thanks. Hello, members of the board. Thank you for considering. Also here to bless you. Also here to speak on the food reallocation plan as put forward. I appreciate you all's time and considering our union's perspective on the matter. We have a food service staff member among food service staff and union steward with us, and got any questions or anything, I'd be more than happy to respond. But we are what I hope to just talk about quickly is just some of the inaccuracies that have been communicated, we feel, to the board by food service management, and talk about how this current reallocation plan, as I understand it, as of this morning, came into being. It has been reported that the staff reallocation plan in food service was something that Local 60 had a plan in creating. management has stated that when they became aware of the need to make changes, that they set up a series of collaborative meetings with our union. As we acknowledged in a letter we had sent to several board members, Local 60 did meet with management to discuss how these changes could be made in accordance with our handbook agreements. There was also a virtual meeting a couple days later with food service staff to know about changes that were planned. At no point, however, was the plan itself part of the discussion. The decision was made, Local 60 was consulted about how to carry it out without violating the handbook, and members were told this is essentially how it's going to be. The discussions among Local 60 stewards, officers, and food service staff over the week or so following that virtual meeting, from those, it was made clear that this reallocation would severely limit staff's ability to continue providing the same made from scratch quality and variety of meals. Several staff told us that they would quit before accepting this plan, and one of them already has. We were told meal options like Second Chance Breakfast at La Follette and Bistro Line in East would need to be discontinued. It was at a subsequent labor management meeting, which we hold every couple of weeks. Local 60 members there informed management of these concerns that the staff had. It was only then that management began talking about preserving Second Chance Breakfast. We're still not sure of the fate of the beef at East. We feel this is something they should have taken into account before deciding this course of action in the first place. Management keeps talking about this reallocation plan in terms of shifting FTE or full-time equivalent hours. Only school employees could be treated as like so many numbers on a spreadsheet. When we first heard the numbers management was using to support the reallocation plan, we clarified that there are important and really valuable differences between or among the meal programs at the schools. That reallocating staff is not simply a plug and play operation. That because at the high schools, they're preparing meals on site, it's a different kind of labor altogether. In response to this, management has decided to discontinue scratch cooking altogether and serve only pre-made meals from the food processing center. We're also now being told that FTE dedicated to the food processing center would allow them to restart baking fresh muffins, while originally we were told the plan was to supply more FTE to the CEP schools to expand services there. This reallocation plan, we do not believe is carefully thought through as is being reported. Management looked, yeah.
Excuse me. Next few seconds, just because of where we're at for time.
Sorry about that, sure. We just think a number of very important things were overlooked by this, and that the immediate outcome of this will be to decrease the variety and quality of meals to high school students. Scott had mentioned that there are other alternatives to this, such as working with teachers and staff and to create more time and more supervision to make sure kids can get online better. We feel there are other alternatives and that this is a really bad way to go. We hope you all consider not doing this and bringing everybody back to the table to a better way to manage this ongoing problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our final speaker is Leland Pan.
Hail, Leland Pan. Know most people in the room here. School social worker at La Follette High School, on the board for Madison Teachers Inc. and a building rep at La Follette High School. So I want to start big picture first and just recognize that I think food service is in a difficult position. I think the history of trying to be financially self-sufficient is a pretty impossible battle. To provide that many meals at the funds that they get is pretty it's quite the challenge. And I'll say frankly, I like asking students who come to us from other districts, like, how's the food? And most of my students actually like Madison's food better than the schools they come from. So I think some, credit goes to our food service for doing the impossible. But I think that as long as we accept that philosophy, in order to preserve the quality of food, say at elementary, it's going to come at the expense of somebody else, right? Like reallocating staff from one to another is always about, preserving quality here, but reducing quality there. I don't really see that as a win. Right. And so I think ensuring that we have good quality food and food at accessible points at the high schools is really necessary. As a school social worker, I see the level of need in our buildings, right? I see the poverty rate. I see, the kids who don't have access to food outside of the building, right? So, I mean, 180 to 200 second chance breakfasts a day at La Follette is, over 30,000 meals in a school year. And so I think we just have to get comfortable with, protecting our food service operations with creative funding sources, right, and creative staffing. So I think I want to start there. I also just want to emphasize that La Follette specifically, I think one needs to interrogate what are all the different impacts, because each high school kind of has different projects with their food service a little bit differently. But at any of the high schools, reducing staffing is going to reduce quality. And different schools have different projects like Eats Bistro Line. But I can only speak to La Follette's second chance breakfast, right? Offered between second and third period class. We unfortunately have one of the highest or the lowest attendance rates, right? We have we're, I think, in my opinion, the worst served attendance area by the Madison Metro, despite having the highest poverty rate and perhaps a lot of families who have unreliable car transportation. We have the highest homelessness rate among the comprehensive high schools, and some of those homeless students rely on cabs, which are almost always late. So we're thinking about kids relying on unreliable buses, relying on unreliable cabs. They're never making first chance breakfast, right? So keep in mind too, this not only are there more students using second chance breakfast than first chance, but also that many of our students will never have a chance to get to that first one. So if you get rid of second chance breakfast, they're not having food until lunch. And so we all know what the outcomes are with hungry kids. They're gonna skip to go find food somewhere else. They're gonna come to my office and ask me for a granola bar, and then I won't get anything done. I'm kidding. But and frankly, they'll be hangry. They'll be less engaged in their academics, and peer conflicts will be more difficult to manage. So I think it will be a worse situation all around for La Follette. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, my fellow board members, we are gonna pass minutes from meeting dated April 13th, 2026. I move to approve minutes from the operations work group meeting dated April 13th, 2026. Thank you, board member Mosner-Feltham, or board vice president Mosner-Feltham. All those in favor? I'm sorry, Lily, your advisory vote?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a pretty jam-packed agenda this evening. We'll be discussing our facilities referendum, our sustainability update, our food services, our priority projects and proposals related to the budget. We are getting an initial draft of our budget, but it's not one that our budget is complete. This budget does represent a full investment in COLA and steps and lanes. It represents a series of investments in board and administrative initiatives. I think we should be very proud of where we are in the process. However, we get to have a thorough discussion of it this evening. With that said, I'll turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Joe Gothard.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow, members of the board. First, I want to start with, I hope you had a wonderful Mother's Day. Yesterday being celebrated as mothers or celebrating with your mothers or both. We do have an action-packed agenda tonight. It's pretty much the Mr. Chiak and Mr. Soldner show, along with their staff. We're getting to that point of the year where we want to ensure that close out this year, but also you have of what we're facing next. Some of you know, I'll just say it now that 11 o'clock today, budget proposal deal was made. Looks like it's going to be voted on Wednesday at the earliest, and we'll be able to understand how that impacts us. But right now, tonight's conversation is really absent any additional information as it relates to that deal that was struck today. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that to you. Really appreciative of everyone who worked hard to get to a place where public education could receive additional funding, but we're still awaiting some details, some important details. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Chiak is going to get started with facilities tonight and sustainability and our CEP program and USDA. And then we'll end it with Bob giving you an overview of our budget.
Good evening, board members.
So we will start with our referendum update this month. We will talk a little bit about where we are and where we're going. And we'll start to open up, showing you the site layouts for our referendum new sites in phase 2. As we lead to designs that will come through in June, right around the beginning of June for public input, and we'll come back here in June to actually talk about what the buildings will look like themselves around the site. So with that, we'll talk about a little bit of a work accomplished. We broke ground in March, the beautiful day that it was. In April, we've been really doing a lot of work with our city folks and friends, doing UDC informational. So looking at how the design is laid out in accordance to the City of Madison planning and zoning. We have also been really working hard on getting what we call schematic designs finished for Cherokee Senate and Turkey Orchard Ridge. And really trying to understand the dynamic around our sites and how they flow. And I will tell you, they changed as of last Wednesday. We kind of started over on Senate a little bit. It didn't quite fit how we wanted to fit on the site and how it worked. And kind of constraints of how students were flowing through that new space. So we sat together and said, we didn't think this would work. Let's reshape this. So we spent a couple afternoons and working with our teams and our architects to really find some solutions we think will work. And we'll continue exploring down that pathway that we continue to drive forward. So here coming up in May, I started halfway through the month and through that process. Again, looking at what the new phase 2 buildings are looking like, we'll be submitting UDC process coming through June and July. So we get to share with our city and our local community what these buildings are going to look like and show up to work within our community. We are planning to have the 100% design development delivered to us. Like about architecture a little bit under the gun because we, had them redo Senate. So, and some little bits of Cherokee. So they've got the right ideas. They have some good concepts and we've learned more and spend more time working with partners and collaboration with our staff members. Great moves for us. I think happy about our design and flow. And as you know, in May, if you haven't been to the local sites, they are moving fast. There's a lot of concrete in the ground right now, foundational pieces. We are still waiting for our building permits. We've hit some hangups there with our city friends, and part of it's our decision for how we were designing our bathroom. But with that being said, we're still on time and budget. We're just having to be a few weeks behind, but those are things we're early in the project. So it's a lot different if it's, first 2 months of the project versus the last 2 months. So we're doing really, really well. You'll start to see those sites go vertical here. The next week and a half, you'll start to see blocks going in, which will be pretty fun to see it take real shape. In June, we do have some public input sessions coming up early part of June for Cherokee and Senate. It's our chance to really push back and getting our community to get some feedback. We've learned from them how we've applied those design concepts with our first initial inputs and throughout our process, and let them really take shape and give us the feedback of, are we hitting the marks? How close are we to do with it was right for our community? And it's a chance for them to really show us if there's any showstopping, right? Really understanding how the sites will move. And we've been challenged by our community, which is a great thing, right? So it's allowed us to think differently, really come up with, I think, some really brilliant concepts, our sites that we're working towards, and still work, obviously. In June also, we will have all of our staff engagements, our principal engagements, really define not just our community look, but internal community, we call it, is how is the building going to flow? How's it going to think about this space? Does it work for you? How does it kind of work in your daily lives for our staff? And those will be coming at the end of May, June, prior to them letting out for the summer. So we'll have time for the summer to make those changes, adjustments. So when they come back, we're back to school nights. That's kind of the, hey, we heard you, we got you. Any showstoppers? Yes, no. If not, then we go right away to construction documents that won't change with the process. And ready for groundbreaking in October for Cherokee and Senate. Turkey Orchard Ridge, a little bigger design, a lot different concepts and planning there. That'll break ground right around 10 months, 11 months from now. So we'll be moving there too. So you get to see our first glance outward to the public. This is our phase 2 site layout for Senate Middle School.
You'd see the left side entrance of Senate remains as the entrance driveway that you would see now. But the road will go straight versus curving in as it does. So the road will be straight. We'll have parent drop off on the left side of our building and an entry canopy for our students to go and access our building site. Relevance to how this building set up, this is on the northwest corner of the existing Senate. It's not quite in where it gets cluttered. We'll redo some of the parking structure area. And then in front of the building, the green grass area for students to play and gather and things that students do will be all in front of the building towards the Plum Road side. Really opening up that ability to have supervision. You picture the center of that building, so you have it out into the green space, so they're out of the green in the learning environment. And then stopping students from being in harm's way with there's cars, all of that happen. Flom Road, you still see existing today. Flom Road is actually done by the city of Madison, starting this summer. So we've been working closely with City of Madison. How does this shape? How do the buses line up? There'll be a new bike path lane that will be on Flom Road. And we're gonna give up an easement for the City of Madison so they can use some of the sidewalk plan there as well. So it's allowed, we have really good collaboration in that piece of really making that site come to life and giving it more opportunity in green space and usable green space for Senate. Because if you know anything about Senate, that area becomes kind of a mud pit. It's kind of a low spot. So that's all kind of reshaped and redesigned to have bioretention basins that don't hold water, but only for a short period of time allows that site to drain, but also it activates all the things that you don't tend to have in Senate right now. There's a lot of the cross parking lots. You have the cross traffic to go play in the soccer fields in the back. That's part of their green space. Now we're having green space come to the front. So you're not putting interaction of traffic and students. You're allowing them to be a little more self-contained. And also opening up that space. If you imagine a football Friday night at Lucier Stadium, that becomes now a walking path. It can be now extension of the stadium where you can have interaction with students and families walking from the community. Unlike now where you're kind of see two buildings and you have to kind of wrap around to see anything. So it'll actually engage that whole site front and back. So we think folks will be pretty happy with how this is coming forward. And it still has that beautiful connection to La Follette. A lot of our students do take classes from Senate into La Follette. So it allows that library mall greens. If you imagine a green skin in the middle there, they're going to walk down and walk right into La Follette to the educational learning experience and not have to cross traffic or anything that's back there as well. So that's our latest on our Senate layout. The building is kind of where you see the blues. Like I said, the blue is what it is. The shapes are slightly changing, but that's the generalized format, how that building will be on the site. That want to work for me. There we go. Back. There we go. Here's a fun one. So Cherokee Middle School. Bottom of the page, I oriented it so it shows a little bit different. The bottom of your page is Midvale. To the left of the page is Cherokee Drive. So currently we have buses that are on street for Cherokee. We are working, we had a meeting this afternoon at 2 o'clock with our City of Madison zoning teams. By code, an adopted code, we have to have buses on Midvale. However, this is something that we do not want. It is too much of a risk for our students.
Correct.
The City of Madison has been super responsive to this and understanding the constraints and knowing that. We are working through potential zone challenges or conditional use permits to put the busing back on Cherokee Drive.
Okay.
Made some great progress today. So as you see it now is what you'll see the buses that are staging on Cherokee Drive, keeping the existing layout, and then having the entrance to our site for the parking area will be for our special education buses, parent drop, and also widening out that driveway to give more line of sight to edges to see buses. So it'd be 65 feet from curb to front of bus. So you have a good view and a speed bump. So we're going to be really watching and monitoring traffic so students are commuting safely across that drive space and opening up and engaging that area for the wider bus lane. So right now, can be a little challenging. All the buses, all the special education buses and parent drop is all directly in front of that school. We're separating those spaces to give more access. Also then increasing awareness on the site. Gives a few more parking spots for our staff at Cherokee now. And really brings that safety piece back into play. And we're also shielding those students from Midvale Drive. So a little added bonus there. The building that you see is a new footprint of the building, more anchored towards the Midvale side. A little bit about our site, there's a slope from Midvale sloping down into the site, and of course, we all know the giant hill
Yeah.
coming from the right of the page to the left of the page. So this building will actually activate on the south end of the building with the big hills. The gym box will be buried in the hill, kind of we see a Blackhawk copper, so it looks single story from the hill. Then opens as the site gets downplayed as it coming through the topography. Main entrance to the building on the north side of the page, or the top of the page, facing side of the property line. And on the top of that soccer, you see the soccer field on the right-hand side. That's on top of that first knoll where the existing soccer field is. And you have a secondary hill that comes up towards the back of the apartments and towards Tacoma. So those hills will still remain in effect for our sledding environment.
Yes.
As we work just on the top side of that soccer, blue coloring there, those are the basketball fields, playground equipment, Gaga ball, all of that engages that green space to kind of work together, families. And there'll be another secondary type of hill that will drop into the planning, back into the site, which could potentially lead to another opportunity for on winter time. Get my dress.
Nice no joke.
Hey, get my drift, right? Like that, like that.
Oi, that jokes already?
Thought of that just on a quip. It's fun. Two on the left side of the page and entering the site, this is kind of a fun little unique feature because we have the Arboretum nearby. We have some that kind of tie in the neighborhood. There'll be two buyer retention that'll have some really nice, beautiful natural plantings and a walking path between. There'll be a bench, really opportunity to kind of engage that natural surrounding. It's kind of more turn, but kind of brings that Arboretum feel back into that. And we're going to be highlighting, if you see that big circle tree in the bottom left of it, that's the 250-year-old oak tree, the largest and oldest in the state of Wisconsin. They will be protected, is well protected, and be a kind of a center focal point for the building as you see to it, the education wings. And it activates the corner of that site. We're going to have some natural outdoor learning space there, some natural walking trails to really kind of emphasize the part of nature that's that green space, bringing it back versus here's an urban school, right? So this will be a really fun feature to draw in some of the attention. There'll be some natural seating areas. You kind of see just to the right side of the building, a little bit top of that. There's some aggregate blocks there. We're going to be redoing the retaining wall along that far east side of the site, using those blocks to form new types of seating, kind of bringing the old with the new for opportunities for outdoor learning. And we have community members that are going to help us rebuild or build a new faux chimney for our Swifts. So that'll be a nice engagement piece where our community come use and sit on those rocks, sit up on the soccer fields, and actually get a really beautiful view of the Swifts that are coming and migrating every year, and bringing that back with nature. So
Nice.
pretty excited about the design. We've got some good help from our city partners. It's a lot of stuff packed in a very small box. If you look at relative what it's like, I think they've done a pretty good job of activating. Right, so it's not just a really tall blanket building. It looks normal. A little bit solar on the roof. Well, you can see it go down. You can see kind of a sign of sustainability too. So that's our Cherokee. Now the fun one. This is one that we're clearly working with our community here. We've met with the public about this particular site engagement. We are actively going to be working with the city of Madison and traffic teams to talk about challenges with. We all know this is a growing popularity of road. It continues to be in parts of it a racetrack at times. So part of this work is in our designs, making sure that we minimize the impact of students. Across the street, making sure there's good crossing lanes. We have crossing guards that are throughout this site, but also getting good circulation loops for parents that may bring their children in the winter times, and working with the city of Madison, how we do traffic calming to ensure not only in the long-term growth and plans of the city, but also that techniques and methodology we teach our students in our community on how to navigate. And that can tend to be quite a challenge. So existing site doesn't help, but the new site without reduction of secondary lanes and bus stops, that'll help shape it. A little bit about the site. On the south end of the page of the screen, you see is Russet Road. That's gonna be where the buses still continue to stage. It's where we have our buses now with our existing schools. Existing schools are the very bottom part of this page. And we've now activated the site where we got more continuous green space coming around our school. If you know now, a lot of students will leave the school at Toki and Orchard Ridge side and Toki side and cross traffic. They have to cross the street and cross parking lot. So part of this maneuver is to have, so they're always engaging in the green space and the forest. So just behind the blue building to your right-hand side is the elementary side. So there's a 4K playground attached to the building. Then they have an elementary playground that has a wide open space. Playground structures and equipment tying into nature. And it's purposely bulbed at the bottom side of which is the bottom part of the building. So students who want to elope or run have the supervision has time to react, making sure they're seeing one direction. And obviously the forest itself, it's not popular trees. Sure, all the trees in there. It's a beautiful small landscape that has all kinds of nature built in and around it. Adding to that, on the north, on the very top of the page, a bunch of circles like Wi-Fi symbols and blackness. If you see it on the edge of the forest, we got a series of old trees that are in there. That eventually cut out, and it actually has natural work making the theater seating for that school kind of work into nature. So that'd be a pretty cool feature once you get that done. And on the right side of the screen, adding it to the entrance off Bartlett. It'll bring our traffic away from the front side of Whitney Way and allow to the backside. So student drops and pickups will be back there for our middle schools and a parking area. And again, students are not having to cross traffic. They're not having to cross a parking lot. They can follow the green space and the trails that will lead them to that, including the smaller soccer field, the flag football field. It's being designed. Small baseball field, soccer field, and then the middle school playground is on the bottom left-hand side. We have done all the work to preserve the memorial trees that are still in existence. Orchard Ridge on that left-hand bottom corner. So those were working our bioretention basins around those. And we will be transplanting, likely moving. There's a small grove of fruit trees that about the corner of the new building. They're a little bit compromised due to some have done, but we're gonna try to put back into health. It will shift over, so probably up the tennis courts on the upper right-hand side as part of the forest part. So we really try to activate the site, adding trails, but also moving our traffic away from high volume where somebody's not pulling out in front of other cars and Whitney Way, and it kind of separate our student movement traffic a little bit. So we'll continue to work with City of Madison, our local neighbors to work on Whitney Way. The rest of our site, we're really trying to disperse out that engagement piece of students into this. We all know there was accidents not too long ago. So working in means to never have that happen again as much as we can prevent. So. Quick update on the budget. We're about $11 million spend so far. We are doing and tracking very well. So we're looking at coming up to the GMP. We're planning to have the GMP in the month of May. We have delayed through the month of May now to be for the June board approval. Two things for that. One, the city permitting has not taken place. We're hoping tomorrow to get that permit. We're having discussions with them as we go. But then we'll have to have a planned schedule, a planned timeline, all the implications of what that will look like. We know we are on time and we are on budget. We're actually below budget. But the GMP ties all of those together and have one without the other. So once it all ties together in the next 2 weeks, we'll be coming to the board approval for the GMP. Like I said, we're tracking very well at this point. We're continuing to track and take opportunities as we see them. But most of the bids are in. I think I just officially got the last bid today of the package deals, and they're all pretty good. Pretty happy where we are. We're taking some opportunities to move some of that around and potentially phase 3. Contingency in the GMP, just so you're aware, in the schedule, you'll see where we are in the build plan. More importantly, we'll have a contingency built into the GMP. So we all know there's things that will come up, right? You can expect things that will happen. However, we are going to be the holder contingency in the GMP, meaning our contractors say, yep, I just ran it, I'm gonna use your money or whatever. Everything else is controlled and managed by MMSD and or our owner's rep. So making sure that every penny that's spent, we understand where it goes. It's very closely monitored, right? We're kind of a freak when it comes to that, like every penny, like I need to understand what this means. So we'll be holding that contingency, and the contractors, we have allowed them a percent of as well for any of the design contingency will come up, so they don't have to wait for us. We have multiple mechanisms to watch what's gonna happen there. So there are emergency ones, and then there's well, I'd like an emergency, two different things. So making sure that's covered, and that'll be all part of the GMP, with no expectation to come back to the, well, we want it, it's built in. It's a number you will be locked into saving. That's just how we operate. I hope you guys think that'll happen as well. So. That's all I'd like to say about, please reach out to Let's Talk, any questions on referendum, those questions I see and I try to answer within 24 hours. It's important. I try to share information that we have it. Gotten some great comments from one of our neighbors today and say, hey, by the way, the site was unlocked for the weekend. You guys want to make sure that's done. I'm like, thanks. Like, people are watching. I appreciate that. It's great to have that feedback when we see things happening. It's good to see them. That's huge for us. With that, I will take any questions you guys have on their road.
Vandermill.
Yep, I have a bunch of them, but starting backwards and asking last one. Scott, I know you're doing the best you can, but can we please not use the light blue? And on the GNP ones, the slide was very, very hard.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
For me to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, it's just an accessibility thing.
Yeah.
On the first school, the number, what is the number of parking spots?
Or Blackhawk, which one? Blackhawk Gompers?
Yep,
Existing builds
the one for the new one.
or the new builds?
Yes.
Senate is 182, I believe it is 170, 182. We remove between numbers.
Okay. So that should provide plenty.
It is about 25 less than they have now, but there is about 40 open spots that hang throughout various parts of the day. So we've maximized what we can take, but we also know La Follette, some people there and Senate staff for about 90. So there's lots of staff parking.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, is the green space, I know that area gets swampy. It used to be known as the pit with La Follette. I get that. It gets mucky and everything. Is there a way that we can make the green space flatter so that way?
Yeah,
so that'll be accessible for everyone to use?
Yeah, it's gonna come up about 8.5 feet.
Okay. I appreciate that. I know you said there are nature trails at the other sites. Is there going to be one at Senate or no?
Yeah, there are paved paths and then there are, we call it cow paths, right? They kind of work their way through. We'll kind of keep mowing paths through some of those areas, some of that as well.
Okay, and on the paved paths, there's room for both accessible and non-accessible,
10 foot,
like manual wheelchairs and motor.
10-foot path.
And elevator situation, is Senate on one floor or 2 floors?
2 floors, and the elevator is directly off one of the main drop points and centerized to the building, so you can access everything directly around.
Beautiful.
I think we had to redesign.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the care in that. And the doors with handicap buttons. Perfect. With Cherokee, thank you for saving the sledding hill. I am incredibly grateful over the sledding hill. I know I'm a little ridiculous. I'm 47 years old, but I enjoy. And I'm thrilled on that. Cherokee also will help an elevator, correct?
Yes, centerized as you come in the main entrance and easily dispersible to all areas.
And do we know how many handicap parking spots they have? And you could get back to me.
That's I don't know the exact number, but it meets all accessible codes and it's in part of the building.
Beautiful. And
But that side is like 8.
unique
One now.
building thing that I don't know if you thought about. They're called adult changing tables because there are teenagers who can be incontinent, can never say that word right. continent due to disability. Is there a way? Because I know Senate for a while was using an old locker room and doing the best they could. Is there a way that we could provide a changing table for a larger person?
All of our new middle school, we're all building middle schools, right? All of them have a life skills room,
Okay,
bridge room, as Senate would call it.
okay.
So that, and they have a restroom nearby and attached to, or an adult size changing table in all of those buildings.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And Cherokee, the 250-year-old oak tree, I had no idea. And I'm thrilled that there will be outdoor classrooms and just, again, with accessibility, as long as chairs and people could get through, I think that's wonderful. And my last question is actually a thank you. And that would be the Toki Orchard Ridge and the 4K playground with the elopement areas. As autistic individual, I truly appreciate, because I've had many constituents reach out because their kids are eloping. And I really think that that is a design feature that this district can be proud of, because most don't have it. And just safety wise, it's absolutely essential.
Yep.
So I appreciate that. And that's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. You started at 5:47. It is now 5:52. Other questions or discussions from board members? Board Member Nichols.
Thank you. Thanks for the update, Scott. I have a couple of questions. One is, did you learn anything from the community input staff engagement sessions that you all did for Sherman Sabaz, Black Hawk Gompers, that you're now adjusting for the new upcoming the new input sessions? Or are you feeling like the process you had actually worked really well? Just curious.
Yeah, I would say it's worked well and it's been cumulative, right? So what we learned in phase one, we carried to phase two, because a lot of them are synonymous. We learn that, but sometimes we're giving the public, hey, we heard this over here. Does that work too? They're like, actually, yeah, we didn't think of that. So we're trying to share both ways.
Okay,
Some people maybe lock in on one thing and you're like, oh yeah, we heard that, but, or, and, what about these? So we've been a lot of two-way, it's just not just a presentation to have a presentation.
okay,
So we're trying to be very active and engaging, not just, they can hear us talk, but we also want to pull information out of people. So that's been super helpful in that process.
Okay.
And sharing more of the details about where Madison is growing as well. How Building for the Future is going, and trying to draw more attention to not just today, what does tomorrow look like? Like, tell us about tomorrow. What's the neighborhood doing? What's it feeling? What's it seeing? Those have been big things that have come out.
okay,
And Cherokee was a big one about, they want to tie it back to nature. They have the Swifts, the Mid Swifts, the Active Bird Alliance has been great, telling us about how it's needed, what to do, how to design it, what's needed. So that's been a big part of that conversation. And the community is like, hey, we want the recreational winter spot. We want, don't put a huge parking lot. They can park on our streets, but we want to have green space. So we kind of shaped, everybody likes to have a 400 parking lot, but in reality, with principals and staff, we think we have the right number.
okay. So you feel like you've had the turnout and the variety of input to really help shape?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I would say phase two especially has been a little bit more active. They know we're coming around and really taking the time active on it. And our folks in phase one, local family members, like I said, let's talks.
Okay,
They're emailing occasionally like, hey, what about this? What about this? So we're kind of really keeping them engaged in that process to make sure they're heard.
okay, great. And then you kind of mentioned that you've been sharing more information about Building for the Future, but my question specifically, how are the schematic designs being created, incorporating information that's also being shared through Building for the Future? So, I was at one of the input sessions last week, and when you look at all of the data around residence population, you look at inter and intra district transfers, you're looking at building capacity and how many classrooms. How are you all incorporating some of that into the schematic designs builds?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And there's draft scenarios, there's things you have to work with these assumptions, right? So we know the base of what our enrollment is looking like now. In addition to not only am I taking permission from the Building for the Future sites or people feedback or whatever may show up, it goes deeper than that, looking at the Madison's master planning. What's the plan committee?
Okay.
At
Got it.
what's the future of that area doing it? Cause it's what is today won't be tomorrow.
Right.
So so I'm building a Tokyo Orchard Bridge. I'm having the design team look at right now, the original enrollment was to be about 295. We're at 240-ish right now. So a little bit bigger, but not a lot. But now we've gone back and said, hey, wait a minute. Southwest Madison's growing so fast.
Okay.
Let's plan, if we can get this in the shape and the budget, which we're working towards, is can we have another 100 students in that elementary side? We know the middle school is big enough.
Yeah.
We purposely push that higher. But like, how does that work? And then if it doesn't fill right now, can we use that opportunity for play and learn? Can we use it with Clean with Tune? She's in the same building as I am. So we're like, if this is not vacant, can you use this? She's like, absolutely, we need this more in this area. How do we bring
Okay.
people into MMSD and utilize the building
Great.
for different purposes, right? Not just K through 5, it's pre-K,
Yeah.
A 3K, play and learn, community event.
Yeah. Okay, great. I love hearing that. My final question is, I know on one of the slides you showed that we're 2 to 3 weeks behind, but still projected to be on track
Yeah.
for 2027. And I guess my question is, given things that are happening in our world, are you at all worried about the end part of the projects where you all are bringing in like the furniture, like things where you would need a supply and demand chain to be working really well? But if things are holed up on a ship somewhere on the other part of the world, like, are you at all, or are the folks worried about what this could look like, or
No,
not so much?
That's a great question, and I would say no, and the reason being is we built that early. Part of we
Okay.
designed our schedule. We have the normal build schedule, and I come from a different world that COVID hurt us badly, so I'm like, move this up 6 months. I'd rather
Okay.
have time in the beginning to think versus like, oh, we'll get that. Like, no, we're actually starting our furniture designs and work like that already.
Okay, great.
This coming week. And then during the summer, we've done inventory of what is title, what is assessor, and what's normal. And then this fall, we're doing engagements with our principals and some staff in those schools to really understand what kind of picking outs.
Okay,
And we're ready to order January.
beautiful.
So
Okay,
our order is gonna get in to see those approvals early next spring. So we're gonna have 7 months where we have to.
actually
Way ahead
physically
of
have them. Okay, great.
Scott, if I could add to that too.
Yeah.
Having occupied schools on those sites is a huge benefit. When I transitioned here, I left a project where they were 2 miles away, and they did end up being delayed with getting back in. It's just a huge inconvenience to try to schedule that much logistical movement.
Yeah.
But in this case, should we see any delays, we can stage both buildings at the same time to look for the best seamless transition. But I know Scott's looking at it every week. We talk about it in our meetings.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Nothing to chance.
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. Your time started at 5:53 and it is now 5:59, and we'll hear from Board Member Saravo.
Thank you, Chair Malcho. I just have a couple of simple questions. Thinking like the outside spaces. I like using playgrounds and stuff over the summertime. A lot of community members like to do that. Out of the schools that we went over today, are they all keeping most of the outside, like the playground, or like which one is switching? Are some of them getting new things and some of them keeping old?
So Tokyo Orchard Ridge and Cherry have all new setups because they're occupied a lot of the space. There'll be some temporary things that we'll put into place for our students to still have activity for a year and a half or a year. And then Senate will keep the existing playground in the front. We're actually keeping that. There'll be a little bit of a shaving off of one end of it, but it'll be reallocated.
Oh.
And more will be added to it. So they'll have a space there. So the building's gonna be in the back when they're building. So we're trying to keep all the students away from sheltered from construction as well. So we're gonna keep that stuff in play, all accessible.
And are any of them getting like new courts or anything like that?
Well,
Cause like,
all of them, yeah.
there's a lot going on these pictures.
All of All of them will.
Oh. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was. Yeah, I'm just thinking summertime and outside.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
I had the same question because we replaced so many playgrounds. I was like, I wonder how much of that's being reincorporated. So thank you for asking. Board Member Saravo, you started at 6:01. Are there questions from the board? I just want to highlight that as we're talking about the second phase of this project, we're going from kind of the 3 schools we've started with and those schools actually not for school, but it includes some buildings and structures to another set of 3 buildings, which kind of puts us beyond the halfway point of this project. And I think that's a pretty tremendous turnaround in terms of time. Are there things that we as a board should be aware of in terms of what will impact the timeline in relationship to shifting students into these new facilities?
Nothing at this point. We've had conversation with our principals of the existing buildings, knowing that there is gonna be traffic supervision changes and stuff like that. So we've really worked with, tell us how that could work for you. Like, here's what the layout will look like. Tell us how it works. And we've had a couple like, that doesn't work. Can we put a temporary, like Sherman has a temporary fence, right? Can you put a temporary fence? Because I got elopers I like to move and I need this particular circle swing moved or roundabout because I have students that. So we can go through what's flat. So we're always working with that staff. Minimize disruptions, but also be clear about this can't be accommodated for. Now, what else can we do to ease that burden? So it is a constant, and we're deep into starting those 2 right now. They're a little slightly different shift of things. Senate's not as bad, but you start to getting these other buildings. It affects our students more. Senate's more like it's gonna affect the staff because we're taking that parking lot. So we're working on means to try to temporary have different parking areas. So we're working on already shift the followed staff back to their parking lot. We're gonna restripe some things this summer to city move. But as I told our Senate staff, it's going to stink really bad for about 1.5 years. I'm trying to find means to mitigate it. But I've yet to find the magic answer. Yeah, we're trying to figure out if Nichols Building potentially could be used for, renting some space for vehicles, but they're in Menard Grove is in process of potentially selling that building too. So we're working means to help alleviate some of our staffing challenges that may happen.
I will say it's really exciting to hear you talk about these projects, and I think there's so much intentionality in how we're approaching this work. Is there anything you want to highlight that you think is just something our schools are gonna be tremendously excited about? Or that you feel like an individual site asked for and you wanna make sure they know, you heard them?
I would say our biggest asset in all this is what we've heard from our students. And we've had a lot of student engagements and we've done a lot of things in, natural light. What can we add for bathrooms, more bathrooms, accessibility to bathrooms. So we purposely intentionally put more bathrooms in the housing sections. So they don't have to go a long ways. The staff's like, oh yeah, that would be great too. For a teacher, like I can watch my student right here.
Yeah.
So, and they're feeling safer in that mentality, they have more supervision. So that's been a huge point. And we found some mini architects along the way. They're telling us how things will work. And we're like, that makes sense. So.
That's right. I started asking questions at 6:02. It is now 6:04, and we're gonna move on. Board Member Vandermeer.
I'm sorry about that. I just read my notes. And that was on, is there a way we can approach city one on crossing guards at the middle schools to help fund crossing guards, especially during this building time as it may be more difficult? And my second question is there a way we can work with the city so our teachers aren't given parking tickets when there isn't enough places to park?
Some of that, if we know what we're doing for parking, we can allow some of that, but there are restrictions for fire access and code, things like that happen, right? So we're particularly around Senate, we're trying to have those conversations of what may be feasible. You're going directly into neighborhood feeders, right? So that's conversation we're starting to have. When it comes to the other part of the question is for crossing guards, a lot of that comes from identifying have.
Okay.
Given how the sites are working, like Senate would be a tight constraint, but we're also trying to work with how dropping the buses are going to happen. We made in the traffic of the construction on Falam Road.
Yeah,
So the city's done a good job saying, hey, we're gonna do all the majority of the work from this time to this time before your students are there.
Okay.
And so we're working with them to understand where we're gonna be working and where they are and timing it. And knowing the fact that our transportation team is deeply involved. You have to be out of the way by like the 20th of August with some carryover time.
okay.
And then what does it look like to finish it? So they turned it from a last year project into a this year and next year project because we're like, hold on. Like, we're doing something too. So they've kind of delayed their project to accommodate ours and we're working really close.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for indulging.
No, you started your second set of questions at 6:05, ended at 6:06. It's all right. Board, when there are no further questions for the session, we'll move on to our next topic.
I will say I'll give a board memo later this week about kind of more about our buildings, about building our assets. Becomes a lot of data on a screen. So I'll package it up in a nice format you guys can read about how we are our asset and the preventative maintenance program. So I'll bring that as a memo. It can get to be a lot in a Monday night meeting. Some data you can take time and revert back to and look at. So with that, we don't do anything in our district without sustainability in mind. We understand the 2045 resolution. And with that, I will bring up to the stage Joanna Kreckler, our Sustainability Manager. Hey, want your clicker?
Oh,
Push the
how do I?
How much to go before?
Okay. Thanks. Good evening, board members. Thanks for having me tonight. Excited to give you a sustainability update. So kind of piggybacking off of what Scott said, regarding our phase 1 referendum schools, they did receive the 2025 Dane County Climate Champions Award for their design and energy and sustainability. So some of the key features that are highlighted in these buildings, which you've probably heard already before, but I'll highlight them again, is that our energy use goal on these buildings is to have 25 kBtu per square foot or less. And just to give you a little bench line on that, the average building in Wisconsin is 55. So we're cutting the energy use about half from what you're seeing from most buildings. No fossil fuels, geothermal. Each of the phase 1 schools are gonna have 0.5 megawatt of solar on them. And then we are installing all low flow plumbing fixtures, and we have achieved a 30% reduction from the project baseline with water. Site strategies, Scott touched base on a lot of these already, but we're making sure all of the schools have outdoor learning spaces. And also putting in materials where we can reduce the heat island effect. From a transportation standpoint, we're making sure there's ample bike parking, walking paths for community members and students. And then we are gonna have, thanks to a Dane County grant, the phase 1 schools will be getting EV chargers as well. There will be 4 EV chargers at these schools. On materials and resources, so a lot of times you hear carbon, and even our own MMSD energy resolution revolves around operational carbon. But on these projects, we've taken it one step farther and we've looked at the embodied carbon. So for those that are not aware, embodied carbon is the carbon in your materials, all the way from it being manufactured to the end of the life of the product. So through demo and then how is it being recycled or thrown away. So it calculates the entire carbon of the product. And so we set a goal to have a reduction from the project baseline. And we achieved a 19% reduction based on our construction documents. We're also making sure to select low emitting materials, so low VOCs, so we can have better indoor air quality for our students. And then we've also taken into consideration waste diversion, setting up the schools with dishwashers so we can have reusable trays instead of throwing everything in the landfill, placing sinks near where the dishwashers would be so students can dump out their milk and we can recycle milk cartons. And then offering share tables for students to be able to share food. Obviously, it has to be within certain parameters, right? We're not gonna share a half-eaten sandwich. but bananas, oranges, prepackaged carrots, you know, whatever it might be that is following the proper protocols on that. And then indoor environmental quality, we have set up the buildings to have the capability to increase ventilation rates if it is needed. And then also incorporating biophilic design into the projects with natural daylight in the classrooms for students' health and well-being. But we're not just focusing on the referendum schools. We are looking at all of our existing buildings too. And we're using our utility data to improve our building performance. So a few ways that we're doing this is through error detection. So I do have an example up here of one particular school that, as we were reviewing the utility data last year, about a year ago now, we noticed that in December of 2023, the natural gas usage doubled, more than doubled. And so we worked through with our steam fitters and with MG&E to discover that the meter had actually been installed as the wrong size. So we were being charged twice as much. So we got a refund for the last year and a half. Just by looking at our utility data through that. And so you can see it's returned to normal on the right-hand side in late 2025. Yep, early 2026. We're also using it to identify our high energy use buildings. So prioritizing those with high energy use, and we're starting to do some retro commissioning on those buildings. So finding the low cost, no cost items that we can make easy adjustments to schedule, set points, other items. And also optimizing our controls. We have a lot of outdated control systems, but doing our best to program these controls so we can have more efficient buildings. And we've also started setting up monthly meetings with our controls contractor so that we can be more proactive in a lot of these identifying issues rather than reactive. And then last but not least, if you are not aware, MMSD does have a sustainability website now. And we do have on the sustainability website many things, but one of them is the utility data of all 4 high schools on the website. So if you're interested in that, it is published there. One of the other many things published on the website is our 2045 energy resolution. So these are preliminary numbers. It's not finalized yet, but we're at about a 26% reduction from the 2019 baseline using our 2025 data. So I say preliminary because to calculate these numbers, we're using MG&E's grid numbers. And so as of 2024, their grid was 20.4% renewable energy. And so they published their information in like June. So in about a month, they'll give us the 2025 numbers and we can update it accordingly. So right now this is calculated to get us in the ballpark. And we saved 3,800 metric tons of carbon through on-site and off-site solar over the course of the year in 2025. And then last but not least are kind of some sustainability initiatives that we've been up to over the last year. Thanks to Carton Council and Sustain Dane, we launched district-wide milk carton recycling. We are about 85% of schools are successful in doing it and doing an awesome job. And we hope to be at 100% at the start of the next school. So pretty exciting. West Green Team, myself, Dane County, and Purple Cow Organics launched the first annual Squash Your Waste event in November after Halloween, and composted over 5,000 pounds of pumpkins that got saved from the landfill. So hopefully we can do it again this year and you can all come out and bring your pumpkins along with. We also received an urban forestry grant to increase our tree canopy and incorporate outdoor education into the curriculum at Shabazz High School and Mendota Elementary School. And we're hoping to have some of the Shabazz kids come and mentor the Mendota kids as part of that project. So we'll be launching that at the next school year, beginning of next school year. We continue to expand our fleet, electrify our fleet within MMSD. We bought 3 new electric vehicles this last year to bring us up to about 10% of our fleet is now all electric. And then I started to touch base on this one at the very beginning, but thanks to Dane County's grant program, 13 of our schools are going to be getting EV chargers. So 2 of them are the phase 1 schools that I already mentioned, and we have 11 more sites that will be getting EV chargers as well. So. And that's all I had. If you guys have any questions.
Board Member Vandermillen.
Yes, one, great work. I appreciate that. I have, heard from some of, some students, especially from East, that a lot of times the waste gets mixed together because the janitors simply can't keep up. My regret, on when I voted to expand the high schools is I should have expanded the janitorial service. Is there ways to make sure that that can happen? Are there substitute things that we can do? to include that?
Yes, so custodians are aware and they have been notified even recently that recycling should be taken to the recycling, waste is taken to the waste bin. And I have been in contact with some teachers about education for people, because a lot of it comes down, you know, I've had people reach out to me like, can I recycle a pizza box? And sometimes it's people just don't know what's recyclable and not recyclable.
Can you?
The city of Madison prefers you to tear off the lid, and the lid can be recycled and the bottom needs to be thrown into the landfill, so.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
So I think a lot of it comes down to just understanding what it is. A lot of the custodian staff too, I think, sees contamination, the chip bag in the recycling, and so then needs to be thrown out. So some of it is an educational component again. If it's a chip bag, we can probably still recycle it, or we could take that chip bag out. But if they are dumping food waste into the recycling, we cannot recycle wet contaminated recycling, even if it was properly sorted and then someone dumped their food in there.
Should we, is it your suggestion that we also educate both students and staff together on this? Cause heck, I don't even know on pizza boxes. If I don't know, there's gotta be a lot more people who are smarter than me who also may not.
Yeah, I think that's the first step, is educating people, because if you don't know, it's hard to do the right thing, right?
And that's all my questions, Chair.
Board Member Vandermillen, Board Vice President Mosner Feltham.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for all your work and for the presentation. I was really excited to hear that things are going well with the milk carton. The milk carton recycling, and that you're setting up to be able to use reusable trays, and people come and talk to us and we're like, well, it's so simple, why aren't we doing it? And I feel really grateful that now we are. So it's really, really exciting. And those preliminary numbers also look really great. I have one question. I have 2 questions, I guess. My first is about whether or not, or if you are thinking about and are finding like fertile partnership in helping students to use some of this data. I'm thinking about, the West Green team, but surely there are many other high school students who would be able to use this very local data about our energy use as they're hitting their math standards. Is that something that you've been able to partner with people on? Are there openings for that partnership?
I would love, so I'm gonna answer it in 2 parts. I would love to expand it into more curriculum and get more students involved, but I have had teachers reach out, and I know teachers at La Follette are using the solar data on their high school building because they've reached out to get access to it. It's now on the website, they can access it there, but even before that, I was giving them the link to access it there. And then I should have had it in my slide, didn't. La Follette, again, I gotta highlight them. They actually did a competition this last spring, and they ended up winning Renew Our Schools, and they had to go around and complete an energy audit at their school using live data. So they actually have what's called an e-gauge, and you can watch the data going on and on the screen live. And so they were doing energy audits and turning off lights, and you can see real time what's happening with the energy use through all of that. So there are some awesome students and teachers out there using the data, but it is not widespread yet.
Okay. Cool. My second question, forgive me for not remembering exactly how long you've been with MMSD.
I started in February of 25, a year ago.
Okay, here. So I would love to know, what's happening that's making your work possible, and where are you seeing just like everything's going great, and where are there roadblocks or things that are uncertain that could be helped.
The referendums are great. I think we get to have a lot of input in those and help shape the sustainability in those. Winning grants is phenomenal. The Dane County EV Chargers has been great to get those installed at all of our schools. Obviously, the urban forestry grant. The milk carton initiative started through a grant as well. So all the grant funded initiatives have been going really well. Some of the biggest hurdles, I guess, are just, I mean, it's probably what everyone says, it's budget, right? Budget constraints. You know, it would be great to have $4 million to put more solar on, but you know, not necessarily within our budget. So coming up with creative ways on how to solve these issues. And it's starting with retro commissioning of these buildings. So how can we save money just using our existing facilities and reduce the energy demand there? Hopefully be able to reinvest that money into more sustainable op for our school district.
So fabulous. Thank you so much. That's all my questions.
If I can add it, I think Brianna as well, like, it's been good having a thought partner of what if we did something different, right? Everybody's habits, right? Everybody has habits, including our steam fitters, our teams. Being able to have conversation with Brianna, be like, hey, Brianna, what if we just shut boilers off this time? What's the actual data tell us can we shut the boilers off when it's 50 outside and not have to turn them on? Because the natural heat of the day. So we find classrooms that heat up during the day. So there's a compounding effect, right? Boilers on because you have to have it. On in the morning, right? Habits take over. So she's been active, like, let's just do a test. Let's do this and this and this, but also not only stay in the classrooms environment, but you're not burning natural gas. So having a partner for doing that is to really dive into the weeds and really understand from a concept to application and data point gathering. So then backwards, she's also educating our trades folks, our managers about what it means to do that. This is not just a thing to do, but also here's the benefits that it meets our goals. It helps our community, it helps our environment. So even they are changing their perspective on how to review things. And now they're actively working a little bit, right? A feeding back of, actually, I think they can do that too. I'm gonna go try it over here. And so they're already taking the next steps versus being told to do that. Because it's becoming ingrained in the culture. And Brianna's done a great job kind of leading the charge and making it at the forefront.
That's so cool. And hearing you talk like that, I'm just reminded of like how essential that way of approaching things is not just for our facilities operation, but for our entire organization. So we think about what does excellence together look like over the next decade? Being able to say, okay, well, these are our habits. Are they working? Can we change them? Can we try this and see how it goes? So thanks so much for your presentation for all of this work.
Thank you, Board Member Mosner-Feltham. You started at 6:19, now 6:24. Board Member Vandermeulen, I forgot to tell you your time, and you started at 6:16, ended at 6:16. Nice job, Speedy. Board Member Saravo.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. Glad you're talking a lot about recycling and things like that. That was something that was big in my house growing up, so I'm always cognizant of what things go in there, what gets contaminated, whatnot. And which always helps the people that we have that are taking that stuff out and what they have to do with it thereafter. What kind of information, like education about what to do with stuff about where you put it, how clean it should be? Things like that. What are we doing right now to inform students, staff, anybody about how to do that?
I wouldn't say there's anything district-wide, I guess, on necessarily how to do that, other than like standards you've learned at home or teachers in the classroom teaching it. We've had some schools with green teams that's taken initiatives and have, you know, made posters or other things on how to educate students on what to do and trying to get more students involved in that. But that's really what I would like to get more involved, or somehow myself more involved in how can we educate all of MMSD schools so we are following proper recycling procedures for students and custodial staff. I mean, there's like I learned with milk carton recycling, like it's best to just shake the milk cartons out of the bag, or it needs to be a clear plastic bag that's not tied. And so there's, you know, if we're tying it up, that's an improper way to dispose of them into the actual recycling bin. So I think there's a lot to be learned there. And
So like right now, we don't have any like signage or anything that's like above anything either, like the bids are there, but we don't have.
not that I'm aware of.
Bless you.
When we rolled out the milk carton recycle, provided all schools with signage, but I don't think there's any specific signage for all the recycling bins for it to be posted above or anything. But that's, yeah, that's one way to start educating people in a easy way.
I think that would be a good thing to put out there in general, considering how the US kind of ranks overall. Just to give people a good sense of what to do here, and I think it just helps everybody who's involved in the entire process in the first place. So, thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Saravo. You started at 6:24 and it is now 6:26. Further questions or discussions from our board?
Just a thank you.
I share the thank you. I do have a couple questions related to cost savings. And so I am curious, obviously, we budget with a presumption that energy is gonna cost a certain amount. Energy is not getting cheaper. So I think my fear is we're making these really strategic investments in the environment. But I don't know if we're gonna see the return on investment I had hoped initially, and I think we might want to adjust our expectations to the modern moment. Unless it's going really well in a way that I haven't factored in.
I would have to look up the actual cost saving numbers for you. But I'm gonna be at, just as like a positive note, I guess, I'm gonna be at the WASBO I'm gonna give a presentation at WASBO on Friday, and I'm highlighting our Ref 2020 projects there, and we put in cooling at these schools and we upgraded to high efficiency boilers and chillers. And we actually are cost neutral, even with adding cooling. So I mean, that's a pretty and square footage. We had square footage cooling. And we've been able to maintain cost neutral because of the efficiency upgrades. So it's a pretty monumental thing, I think, and to show other districts that it is possible. But you are correct with the Ref 24 projects. We are electrifying, and electricity is more expensive than gas. Gas is cheap, but hopefully with the solar, 0.5 megawatt of
I feel
solar.
like you're the only person saying gas is cheap right now.
I mean, comparatively, you have to compare the two.
Like,
And you don't
I
know
hear
what's
you.
gonna happen, right?
Yes.
It could be that gas ends up being way more, it's hard to predict the future, right? But
for now,
comparatively-
electric is more expensive.
And it's more expensive to have an all electric facility, so you're correct. But that is why we're putting in high efficiency items like geothermal. Our domestic hot water is gonna be air source heat pumps instead of just electric. And so trying to get sufficiency we can out of it to reduce those costs.
Thank you so much for speaking to that. I think my hope in the long run is that that we're embracing sustainability for a variety of reasons, and that includes a real strategy in terms of cost savings and our relationship to renewable energy. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk about our approach to energy and our approach to things like our fleet. I want to celebrate that our fleet is at 10% electric. I think that is tremendously important. In terms of orientating this board to decisions we'll need to make in the long run in order to truly realize our vision for sustainability and renewable energy and school districts that are good for the environment and good for the long-term health of our world and our young people. Are there decisions you are hoping we make, or policy decisions you think we need to start considering? Including things like banning single-use plastics with exceptions for students who need that to navigate disability, or kind of other, more clear standards of how we navigate this in our day-to-day reality.
Yeah, I think it can be tricky. And I think any small steps we can take forward, like just educating on recycling, is a positive step forward for MMSD. I don't know if I have any specific policies off the top of my head, but I mean, yeah, getting rid of single-use plastics is a great start. And I really like from a student perspective, energy is really hard to make sense of what energy is. And I often find myself, when presented in a student situation, always going towards waste, because it's very hands-on. Students get that environmental stewardship and they get to like physically touch the sustainability aspect. So I think from like a student perspective, that always makes sense, because that's what they can feel and see and touch. And it's really hard to understand what is energy. It's just this thing, and my phone just magically works, right? So not that we shouldn't educate on energy as well. I'm not saying that, but
I feel like I remember like the key and the height as like our intro to electricity. It took me a long time before I got to like the pricing of light bulbs being a strategic.
Yep. Which is
reality.
really cool about what La Follette and the Renew Their Schools thing that they did, because they actually watched the E-gauge and they got to see it like go up and down with, you know, lunch service turned on and then there's a huge spike at La Follette and they're like, oh, that's because all the kitchen equipment turned on and they're heating up our food right now.
So you mean
Oh.
our parents were actually right when they said shut the lights off? You're not trying to fund the entire neighborhood?
Our parents are always right. It was just Mother's Day, Nikki.
It does, believe me, I put mine through the ring.
I really appreciate your answers to our questions this evening. Are there follow-up questions from our fellow board members or Scott? I see your hand.
I will add, as we continue to look at long-range facility plans, that's one of our big drives this year, is getting that ready for the fall. Is the 2045 no greenhouse gas resolution. We're driving everything we get to that point, and obviously new referendums help do that work. But as we start diving into retro commissioning and realize like, okay, now can we replace, do we need to replace a boiler now? How do we do that? Or longevity of those buildings, right? Buildings are all in different shape sizes and forms of shapes they are. Those become large investments that have to be made, and knowing how our funding continues to be challenged every year. Legislating all of those things are things that we have to really look fine. Retro building, that's the important part to do. But as the world is starting to change, CMGD moved their target to 2050, and everybody's feeling the pressure of the financial situation of the world that we live in. So it becomes the first thing is when funding goes away from reimbursements or IRA tax credits, we see that number is potentially at risk, where they used to have the funding 3 years ago and it's like go, 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 go. And now it just, as we all know, political climate closes it up. So that's usually not the first thing to be sacrificed, and that's not our first thing to sacrifice. But it is also a barrier for us when we start looking at, love to do that, but now that credit went away. How do we find other means to still make that happen and get something of the effect or a starting point so it's added to later? That's what our designs we've done now is we could go all solar, but we're losing out on opportunity. But let's make sure we get it in all of our buildings and make it expandable. So when the funding does come back or whatever's changed, now we're gonna add. It's added. Not having to redo structures and all of those things. So it's part of it is getting to the full resolution point, but also preparing ourselves to be ready for the next helpful initiatives of the government finances or things that come about.
Well, and we
Run through that.
adding on to that, we've started having conversations, you know, as we replace a toilet. I'm in the room going, let's do a low flow toilet. You know, we can make small changes as we're already making adjustments and changes. And so we aren't using as much water. Now that's not heating it, but it's still water and it's still energy use and a bill that we pay. And you know, thinking about maybe we can't put geothermal in because an air handler broke, but could we do an air source heat pump that's dual fuel and uses natural gas then only when it's really cold outside? So making those small changes to get us in the right direction. Our conversations we're having, so.
Thank you very much for that additional information. I started asking questions at 6:27. It is now 6:34. If we have no further questions for board members. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, it's not a question. I just remember when we had updated the resolution was it 2024? That we updated it. And we were saying then, like, we need a sustainability manager, and we were getting lots of comments about that as well. So now that you've been in and you've got like a year under your belt, like, thank you just for like bringing in the data. Thank you for the thought partnership and the suggestions on how like even the small things that we can do add up. So yeah, just appreciation.
Thank you. I echo that sentiment. We will now talk about our community eligibility provisions.
Okay.
So there-
Right, I will turn it over to Josh Perkins, and then Bush is here also to talk about the continued conversation we had a few months ago about CEP. Where we are currently with CEP in relation to one, finance and funding. And then talking about what it means to potentially go full CEP if that's the choose method we choose to go on. Also some data points behind that. So as we all know, CEP is never free, right? It is a challenge that we fight every day, and it does not cover the cost that we currently put out. Just for a variety of reasons, right? It's a great program for some of our students that need it. It can be a challenge administrator, and we feel the pain like every other school across the country when it comes to CEP and accessing for food. So with that, I will turn it over to Josh Perkins.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks members of the board for taking a little time. I know sometimes I show up with food and I talk about fun dishes, and tonight's presentation is a little more dry than that, so please bear with us. I'm going to get started with a couple of slides, just a primer of what the program actually is. Scott kind of set the stage perfectly for this. CEP, or Community Eligibility Provision, sometimes presents as a straightforward proposition: sign up and the meals become free. And in fact, it is anything but a straightforward proposition, notably because of what I'll call the mechanics and the accounting of CEP. It's quite different from the other accounting we use for meals. And because we have 17 CEP schools, that's about a third of the schools that we serve meals in. So I'm going to spend a couple of slides just talking about what the program is and is not. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dan for an outline of how this fits into our current financial picture and some options for the future financial picture for CEP. As the name community eligibility may imply, once a school is contracted with our state agency as a CEP school, it makes it possible to serve meals at no cost, breakfast and lunch, USDA meals to all students who go to that school, who are enrolled in the CEP school, without collecting free or reduced applications from those students. So you may still be getting applications from those households or families, but that is a precondition of serving free meals under CEP. To talk a little bit about how schools can become CEP schools, there are specific criteria for this. The first one is to the lower left as you look at the screen. That is the eligibility criteria of schools or groups of schools, which our current configuration includes both a group of schools and a standalone, which is Kennedy, that was added last year. They must have, to qualify or to apply for CEP, have at least a 25% identified student percentage threshold. And that itself has a specific meaning. So it's important not to conflate it with the total number of free and reduced students, because that total number could include identified students for CEP, and it can also include students who qualified through the application process. ISP has a specific definition, which is to your lower right. Those are students who are certified automatically for free meals via programs like Medicaid, SNAP, or their status. There are a few different categories. And so if you are familiar with the direct certification process, that qualifies many, many of our students. It is not through individual applications. That is one category of students who can fall into the ISP category. As the slide says, status as foster, homeless, or migrant can be another. Also association with another member of the household who qualifies for free or reduced meals. That is the specific definition of ISP that CEP must. This slide is just a primer on our current status in MMSD. We have 17 total CEP schools. The most recent being Kennedy Elementary, which was added in 2025. The original group of 6, I say original because it was original to me when I was hired in 2022. That group of 16 has been the same since I was hired, and we added Kennedy last year. The second bar here shows meal participation. And I would draw your attention to this one because it's important, and Dan, I think, is going to get a little further into this financial picture. it can sound, and I think sometimes does sound, as though once meals become free, that all of the students in the school naturally, of course, will start to eat the school meals. That is not really, sorry about advancing slides. That is not really the case for us. We have a range from about the middle of the range to the higher end of the range in our CEP schools. So participation, and this really refers, I think it's fair to say this refers mainly to lunch. Breakfast, we have a little less time. We have a little lower rate of ADP, even in the CEP schools, but they range from 50 to 55% participation for some CEP schools, all the way up to 70, 75%, and sometimes a little higher for some of the CEP schools who are doing really well with their lunch participation. And the last bar just talks about, this is a momentous year. We have a 4-year cycle coming due. We will need to recontract for that group of 16 at the very least. That letter of intent will be filed with DPI on June 30th, and we have new rates that are coming into effect along with some of the changing demographics that do affect CEP. That, Dan, I will turn it to you.
Thanks, Josh. So I should introduce myself since I don't think I've met most of you. My name is Dan Bush. I am the accounting manager for auxiliary services. I'm a member of Bob's team in PBPA, but I am the liaison between our budget and accounting team and then Scott's folks out at Flom Road, including food and nutrition. So I kind of serve that role. I also want to say before I get into the financial data that I feel I have a good understanding of the day-to-day impact of the CEP program. I am a current Sherman, former Mendota parent. So in all of my daughter's years in MMSD, I've never had to pay for lunch, not once. So that's something that, the culture and the, in the school, that is noted. So I think I'm going to be giving a very financial analysis, but I would just wanted to preface that I do have, understand the impact as a parent, as a member of our Sherman Middle School community. But I think with that, the most difficult thing I think for folks to understand about CEP, and this is true across the state, we have in the Business Association, we have kind of email questions. There have been a lot of questions this spring about CEP, how it even works, funding source is. And I think part of the confusion is that there's an idea that CEP is a particular funding program. It's a dedicated funding stream. It's full funding for feeding all students for free. That's not the case. CEP is a reimbursement methodology for our existing USDA meal programs. And the reimbursement methodology is based on the individual identified student percentage that Josh was talking about. So I think the easiest way to try to communicate sort of how this ends up working financially is to present an example. So I think this is just set up as a fairly as simplified an example as you can get with CEP. I'll leave that there. But let's say we start with a school or a group of schools where half the students are identified. So an identified student percentage of 50%. The CEP methodology starts with taking that 50% and multiplying it by 1.6 to get an 80% percentage, which is the basis for the CEP reimbursement. So that 50% ISP times 1.6 equals 80%. And that does max out at 100%. So if you have a very high ISP percentage, you're still only getting 100%. The way that breaks down is that DPI, distributing USDA funds, will reimburse 80% of meals, that CEP percentage, at the free rate. So for this year, for example, lunches are reimbursed at $4.71 per meal. So in the school where half the students are in the identified student percentage, 80% of lunches are reimbursed at that $4.71. The remaining 20% are reimbursed at free reimbursement, or excuse me, the paid lunch reimbursement rate, which is 55 cents per meal. So every student who is charged for lunch and pays full price, they're reimbursed by the 55 cents per meal. What that means in the school, we have 80% of meals, and regardless of the student, what their free or reduced status might be, whatever their home status might be, every student who takes a lunch in this example school, 80% of those meals get reimbursed at $4.71. The other 20% get reimbursed at 55 cents, meaning that we have an effective reimbursement rate of $3.88 per lunch. So it ends up being based on that identified student percentage, that turns into essentially a rate you're going to get for lunch. And because this is school, you're not allowed to charge. So this is what you get per meal in that school to operate your food service. Now, since CEP, a lot of that is tied to that direct certification from other programs such as Medicaid and SNAP. We are on, understandably, I think no surprise to anyone, on a downward trend, those percentage of students. Starting back in 2023, the Medicaid provision allowing people to maintain ability throughout the COVID pandemic expired, and they had what folks in DHS and elsewhere called the unwinding, where folks started to get eligibility. And of course, more recently with some of the federal policy changes, we have fewer students, fewer families who are able to access these programs. So our identified percentage drops. Multiplying that by 1.6 just modifies the impact of the trend financially as we sort of move into that decline for the identified students. What that means is that even with our current program, we're going to be facing a cost next year with our new 4-year contract. When we look at our preliminary data for April 1st, that's kind of the basis point that DPI uses to assess CEP. This is preliminary data out of our food service system. The official DPI contract comes from certified data through Infinite Campus. But pulling some preliminary numbers for our schools, I have on this bar chart arranged on the left is the highest identified student percentage. On the right is the lowest. Each bar is a school. The yellow bars are CEP schools. The blue bars are non-CEP schools. So I think, as you can see, we have a concentrated set of 8 or 9 schools that are sort of above that 50% threshold, and then they kind of spread out, which is, you know, not the nature of our district here in MMSD. Overall, for our current CEP schools, the average comes in right at 50% with this preliminary data. So that example that I gave in the last slide, other way, backwards, there we go. This is our current CEP schools. So it's just a handy percentage. It worked out very coincidentally that way, which I appreciate math. So when we look at this, the blue bars, the schools that are non-CEP, we have Muir and Whitehorse that are just a little bit above that 50% threshold. And then we get into Emerson, La Follette, East Senate, and get down to 40s. Now, what does that mean for us as a district? Unfortunately, it's basically impossible for us to try to project costs next year. The lunch reimbursement rates, the lunch and breakfast rates for next year have not been released by DPI or by USDA. About a week and a half ago, the White House proposed its new federal fiscal year budget at 20% cut to USDA. Although that announcement didn't say anything about farm subsidies or national school program, the volatile parts of that, but other parts of USDA, they're talking about substantial reductions. So our Fund 50 budget is very volatile next year. It really does not give us a solid basis for projecting impacts of CEP next year. But what we can do, and what I have done, is model what would this year have to look like if we had different CEP scenarios in place. So that's kind of what's presented on the next couple of slides. So if we look at this school year, the top 2 rows, those are actuals for this year. In our non-CEP schools, we're averaging $2.63 revenue per breakfast, and that's between students paying and reimbursement for free and reduced students. For lunch, we're averaging $4.41 per meal. In our CEP schools, at our current reimbursement, which comes from that period 4 years ago when we were still in that pandemic eligibility for Medicaid, we still had higher access, higher numbers of folks accessing those programs. Our reimbursement is pretty well on par between our current CEP schools and our non-CEP schools. As you can see, we're making a little bit more revenue in breakfast, a little bit less in lunch, but they're pretty close. With that drop in the identified student percentage, if those preliminary April 1st percentages were in place this year, then our CEP schools, we'd be bringing in $2.43 for breakfast, $3.88 for lunch. So just That change over the past 4 years is having a significant bite in our revenue in our CEP schools. If we were to look at the district-wide percentage, we'd be looking at $1.85 per breakfast and $2.93 for lunch. Doesn't even cover our costs per meal. So if we talk about different CEP scenarios, and we have kind of a few different scenarios. The low scenario is no change. So basically, what is the experience of food service been this year? The middle is bumping up participation rates by 3% and adding some conversion from paid lunches to CEP schools, to paid lunches at CEP schools. And then the high scenario is 6% participation growth. One thing I want to be really clear about, all these scenarios are on top of our current Fund 50 deficit. So right now, as Scott's been reporting and Bob's been reporting in their last couple updates, we're sort of on track for about a $2.5 million loss in Fund 50 this year. These numbers are in addition to that if these scenarios had been in effect for the current school year. So just district-wide, we were looking at, or excuse me, with our current CEP schools, just at the new rate that we're should about reach based on that drop in identified student percentage. If there's no change in participation, that would have been an extra $400,000 cost just this year. Wow. We could make that up with participation increases though, with having a number of paid schools in order to sort of make up that difference. Now, the two schools that are sort of highest non-CEP schools, Muir and Whitehorse, they wouldn't really have much of an impact on our reimbursement percentage because they're just above where the average of our existing CEP schools are. We would lose a bit of money from not having paid sales at those schools anymore, but that would be on the order of $45,000, $46,000 additional cost. If we were to go district-wide, based on our updated data, we'd be looking at about an additional $2.7 million cost. And if you look at sort of the projections, the cost goes up as participation goes up. Because again, lower rates at the percentage that we're at don't even cover the marginal costs. I think our recommendation to the board is status quo. If you want to have a discussion about additional schools, I think Muir and Whitehorse would be our top candidates. But I think we would we'd be looking at more than doubling our existing Fund 50 deficit next year if we were to go district-wide. Whoa.
Board Member Vandermill. Yes, my question is if a school decides, do we as the district enter the school, the school entered? That's the part that I'm still confused on. I know you explained it, but it's something I'm still confused on how an individual school solely decides we're going to be CEP or we're not going to.
They don't. I file a letter of intent when the fiscal year turns for the group of schools or individual school we want to add to CEP or changes.
And do you believe that increased rate of homelessness, you think that should be our number one factor that we look at, it whether it's supposed to be CEP or should it be on free or reduced?
Well, homeless students are part of the category of identified students for CEP. There's so much else that goes into that category that it's a little difficult to answer the question. And free and reduced also can include, hopefully I was clear, but maybe I didn't express myself well. At the beginning, free and reduced can include students who have applied or households who actually applied, and then students who are directly certified, who are the category that make up ISP.
And then I have two other questions. If an individual, say, family was on Medicare and loses their Medicare, for example, i.e. make too much money, etc. I'll use myself as an example. I took a fellowship that paid over the amount, lost my benefits, still trying to get them back. How would that fix it if I was under free and reduced? Would I then suddenly have to pay full price, or would I still be under CEP?
I don't know.
I think with that scenario, CEP status is set every 4 years. So
Thank you. That's-
whatever a person's status would have been a month and a half ago or so, that would set the point at which the next 4 years of a CEP contract would be. So moving forward, within that 4-year period, if you're in a CEP school, any changes to other benefits status don't matter. That CEP percentage is set for a period of 4 years.
Thank you, that's important. And my last thing, and I've heard this from a lot of constituents, so I thought I should ask, because this is not an area I know well enough, and that is, do you have to state your immigration status? I have a lot of families who are afraid to fill out forms.
Stated for what?
For receiving either CEP or free and reduced lunch, I do not know.
Immigration status doesn't bear on CEP status.
Thank you. That's all I need. I really appreciate, thank you. I know I'm a bit of a novice, so I appreciate that.
Board Member Vandermeelen, you started asking questions at 6:53. It is now 6:56. I saw Board President Castro, then Board Member Mosner Falcone, and Board Member Nichols, and then Board Member Saravo.
Thanks. So looking at the distribution of students participating by CEP or non-CEP schools. When we applied 4 years ago, there's obviously been a redistribution of participation amongst schools. As we see some yellow bars going further down into the distribution. If that makes sense. Have we thought about how when we reapply, how we're going to repackage the schools we want to consider CEP? And any method for kind of forward-looking in terms of student participation to mitigate that redistribution 4 years from now?
So I think the participation and CEP status are two different things. So participation is strictly a matter of the percentage of identified students, whether half of them eat, 70% eat, 90% eat. And that's kind of what that chart represents. It's strictly that percentage of students. So that kind of drift that we've had with the distribution of schools, particularly in sort of that middle section, that's more a reflection of changing demographics, moving across the district, changing in incomes in different neighborhoods than it is participation in the food service program in individual schools. There is sort of a mathematical breakpoint, 62.5%. Multiply that by 1.6, you get 100%. So essentially what we have been talking about and kind of what these estimates are modeled on is regrouping our schools so that our schools that are above that 62.5% offset schools that are below, we can submit them as a group. So when you apply for CEP, you can do it for a school or a group of schools. If you do a group of schools, then you get that percentage across all of them. So if you group the higher identified percentage schools with the lower identified percentage schools, you want to get sort of as close to without going over that 62.5% in a group to maximize the reimbursement rate you're going to get. So we have been looking at we submit a new contract for next year. If we can do any regrouping, Kennedy was entered as its own school last year because the rate at Kennedy compared to everything that we had 4 years ago with our existing contract would have really brought that reimbursement rate down. We would be able, and we're kind of evaluating whether we would bring Kennedy into the big group because it would actually, it may, depending on what the certified numbers are, it's very, very close. It may help our reimbursement percentage a little bit, but we are trying to be strategic about how we group schools.
Got it. Thank you. Just 2 follow-ups. Yeah, I asked about the participation rate because it seemed like the yellow bar furthest down brings down our average for the CEP grouping.
For the identified student percentage, yes, it does.
What number of schools, is there a certain number of mathematical numbers, obviously mathematical, is there a number of schools we need to have average 62% in order to have that break even point? Or like a target number of schools?
So if you're trying to sort of cluster, and I don't know if we can get that chart on the screen.
We can move back in.
Yep.
Yep, so I think if we look at just that top 8 on the left there. That would be sort of a group that by itself would be right around that 61% threshold. So, then sort of the question is, with the other schools and any other schools that we would have in CEP, does their lunch participation rate, because that is going to dictate how much revenue we get total, like be strategic about how those other schools are assigned. So do they help that larger group? Does the higher group help the lower group? It's kind of a lot of finessing that you have to sort of do, frankly, a bunch of spreadsheeting to sort of get to what would be sort of the ideal mix. So that, yeah, that is definitely something we're looking at, but like that first group by itself, if you were trying to sort of do a best possible CEP group, those 8 schools on the left would be right about that.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Board President Castro. Board Member Moser Thotham.
Thank you. I think I wanna zoom out. Classic Blair stuff. Because this has been a really hot topic in the community. A lot of people care about it. I think some of you know that I eat breakfast and lunch at my public school that I work at every day. And I wanted to just zoom out, like, I appreciate you bringing this, and I appreciate you bringing this in the context of a lot of community members being really vocal about this. We have people here today who really care about this, and we have had community members talking to us for several years about this. And I wanna zoom out and like really like ground us. And like the reason this is like a big thing, the reason people care about this across the city is because we care about each other. We care about like our young people eating, like a really natural inclination, especially with so much uncertainty in the world, to be like, but how do we come together in a community that can eat together? How do we make sure that kids aren't hungry? Did you eat? Did you eat? Did you get enough to eat? And so to me, the presence of this presentation tonight in an operations work group meeting feels really good. Feels like we're really taking on this thing that people really care about for beautiful human reasons. I didn't catch your name.
Dan.
Dan, I did catch your name. I was worried I wouldn't get it right. Thank you for coming. I love to hear the details of this work. I really appreciate you putting so much clarity in it. I have one question to make sure I'm understanding, and then a question about how the state does or doesn't function in this state of Wisconsin. On the very first slide where it says eligibility criteria for the identified student percentage and direct certification, I just want to check my understanding. So the identified student percentage at any given school is students who are either directly certified or who apply?
No.
No.
Nope, ISP, yeah, you've put your finger right on what the distinction is.
I see.
ISP is composed of students who are automatically certified for meal benefits without filing an application.
I understand.
Yep.
Okay.
That's
So
why
it doesn't matter what my family's income is. That's not relevant to CEP.
it might not be. The distinction is the ISP and the overall percentage of free and reduced families or students in the school could be different.
I see.
Because you could have a greater percentage, and that would be the most intuitive situation is
Yeah.
you have students on top of those automatically certified who did file an application
Yeah.
and were certified for meal benefits.
I understand. Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Then my next question is, we just heard today that we have a deal on some school funding from the state. Does your team take into account any state programming? Is there anything on the horizon where you think that this calculation could change based on what the state does? And I mean, not just right now, but sort of like ever. And the reason I ask that is because a lot of people do care about it, right? And we've had community members saying, hey, let's do this thing. And I'm hearing you say, like, this thing is not quite as cut and dry as maybe we wish it was. So what other sort of like things might be brewing that people could get involved in if they care about making sure students get to eat?
So there is a lot of legislature in surrounding states for universal free meal. So state of Minnesota has it, state of Alabama has it, but it's not funded. Or other like Mexico has, so there are 2 different programs. So that's been a kind of an underrising of folks in the state of Wisconsin is doing universal free meals. But again, it takes a commitment by the state of $300 to $400, right? So that's not equivalent to CEP. Some do leveraging of CEP and universal free meal. swings. So those are the things that are talked about in legislation. But a few things I think last fall, there's a kind of push forward. Currently, at this point, we don't, it's not on the radar.
Right.
Like it's kind of, they got this funding stream that hasn't been brought to the radar, like we should do this too.
Mm-hmm.
Right, maybe that changes, who knows, but that could change the dynamic functions.
Right. Well, you say maybe that could be, who knows, but when I think about how many people in our community really care about this, I think about what it looks like to be active in coalition, directing it in a specific spot. Because what I'm seeing here is if we wanted to do it on our lonesome as MMSD, we're talking about $2.8 million. Above additional, yeah.
Annually, and I think
But thank you.
on the state level, DPI's role
5.3 million.
with CEP and really all the USDA programs is strictly a mechanical application program. They have reimbursement rates from the feds, they have eligibility criteria, counting criteria, claiming criteria, and they just apply those. They don't really have discretion, wiggle room in how they do that.
Right.
So any change beyond what happens with the federal government, again, we know the situation with the federal government right now, any substantial additional funding would have to come from the state, which is not what was announced today. What's announced
Right.
today was-
Remember proposal bill, and if I could offer just a few things as well, I think for us, I mean, I've seen the flip of this where a food services program is running a surplus to the point where you have a fund balance that you can plan for equipment repair. You can plan for additional scratch cooking, recipes, developments like that. But that's in a district that is a higher level of children who qualify for free and reduced price meals. That's in a district that doesn't have open campus for high school lunch. There's higher participation. Our problem in MMSD is participation.
Mm-hmm.
Just flat out. I mean, it really limits us when, of course, we want all of our children to, have access to healthy meals at any time of the day where it's appropriate. But because we can't get above that threshold as a district, we're going to continue to run deficits as we've now seen. So the question about, new money from the state, I mean, we make decisions as a board and administration all the time about where we're putting our resources. But I think there are some structural things that that I would like to see us get more solidify, before we would consider what does an additional spending plan look like from our general fund.
Yep. No, I was not suggesting that we jump to that at all.
Okay.
But I do hear you saying that for people who really care about seeing us there, that perhaps there's space for community members to work on increasing participation. I don't know what that would look like. I know people in here for sure do, but that's sort of where I'm at right now. I really appreciate this presentation. It gives me a lot more clarity when I'm talking to community members who care about this, and it gives me a lot more clarity on sort of like what the work ahead is. So thank you so much.
I'll add to it. It's important for our families to get certification, bring that information forward, because that only helps not only food nutrition funding, but also title funding. It's a two-headed piece that we've lost a lot of title funding. I'm not going to elaborate, but it hurts our department and it hurts the district and the ability to provide other things as well.
For sure, I would love to hear about ideas for making that more seamless. That's it for me.
Thank you, board member Mustafa. You started at 7:02 and you're done at 7:09. Just keeping myself honest, board member Castro, you started at 6:57 and ended at 7:01. We will now hear from board member Nichols.
709. Okay, thank you. Dan, thank you so much for the details tonight. Josh, it's always good to see you. The first thing I'm gonna say, and it's not a question, I am enraged listening to this presentation, not because of the details of what is CEP, but just hearing you describe the state, that the students who automatically are certified because they are homeless, migrants, foster children, and students who can receive Medicaid or SNAP are at risk of even being certified, combined with the federal government reducing USDA funds, pisses me off. Okay, that wasn't a question. I just needed to say it because
Thank you.
we are in, like, it's just not okay. I do have a question about one of your slides. It's slide, I think it's 29, Jesse. Where you went through kind of yes, in the bottom row, where it says district-wide CEP new rate, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Was that like a scenario that you
Yes.
had modeled?
Yes,
Or is that a reality?
that's a scenario I modeled. Yeah, actually, can you go back?
Okay.
More to the, so we've got the identified student percentage. Our current school is 50%, district-wide 35.7%.
Okay,
So we can go back to the slide we were talking about. That bottom row is, what if we had that 35.7?
If we went full CEP.
If we went district,
Disbursements per, just not a lot.
okay, say it again.
so the bottom row is a scenario that if we got reimbursed at the district-wide 35.7 identified student percentage,
Okay,
that's what we would get per meal under that scenario.
okay,
Wouldn't cover our costs just to.
Right.
Put the meal on the table.
right, okay, thank you. And then just to make sure I understand on the next slide, although you can't quite say what USDA is going to reimburse for 26, 27, you've already heard that there's plans to be reductions. So in the low scenario where there's basically no projected change around participation, you're saying that that would cost us the 2.702, right?
Or that's kind of what the cost difference would have been this year, based on
This year.
this year.
Okay, got it. And then in the past, what we've heard different efforts that have been made around increasing participation and trying is a 3, if we were to even consider the middle option, is a 3% increase in participation likely?
I would say, to answer your question is it takes work.
Uh-huh,
We're seeing now from where we started at the beginning of the year to now, we're seeing some schools hitting 3% or more.
oh, okay,
So there's a blend, right? Some school, I'll give a shout out to Henderson, the peeps over there, they're at 10%.
oh, wow, okay,
Some schools are at 1%, some are holding neutral, so it's the balance overall.
Okay.
We've done a lot of intention here the last week, this week, and then the coming weeks with principals talking about what goes well, what's not going well, to how do we really put emphasis on data points. So we've got them, we're really focusing on what particular, maybe homerooms are having not as much participation and why. So, and some of it's new teachers, maybe they didn't know. So there's some things we're identifying, and the principals of the 4 meetings we've had are like, thanks, I know where to go now. And then we're doing marketing with that, so we can know with efforts now and seeing that draw for the end of the year, and then going into the fall. Hey, remember this, back to school nights, we're doing some presentations, we're gonna try to figure out putting up tables for like direct certification, try to help families get
okay,
engagement and using our teams to help promote that.
okay.
We think that's a reasonable level to achieve.
Okay. And then lastly, Bob, have you already factored this into the 26, 27 budget around? Not yet, okay. Thank you. But I'm done.
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. I had Board Member Saravo as next, then I saw Board Member Pearson come on. I added myself to the stack, and Board Member Vandermeulen, I will call on you after me for your second.
Actually, never mind, you'll probably get to it, so you can probably,
All right, let me know.
I will. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate you guys taking the time to get all this out there. This seems like a special education reimbursement nightmare kind of situation with all the different reimbursement rates that goes on, and the state coming to the table in a very strange way. I want to understand, can you define participation for me? Is that family participation or is that actual student participation?
It's the number of students, school meals against the number of students. So the simplest way to say it is if I had a school of 100 students and 75 ate breakfast every day, 5% breakfast participation.
Okay.
Yep.
Because they're we had a wellness committee. And there, some of the students were saying that the lines were so long, sometimes they didn't even make it through to the front of the line. So I'm wondering, is that having an effect on participation in the general sense?
Sure, that's one of the things we work on every time we go into a school is to see, hey, what is the amount of time a student service are they getting? What could we do to change the setup if they are waiting too long? That's actually been something I've been doing for a while. It's just what anyone else would do, right? There's limited time. And sometimes their social time especially is really precious. And so it's kind of like, I don't have forever to make sure they get a good meal. Watch what they want to do and try to improve it.
Yeah, no, I know there's a lot of participation in clubs and groups and stuff like that, so that was kind of the thing, like, how do I do all the things that are available to me then, while also trying to get through the lines that are there? Do you think that have you heard that feedback? Like, how do you get that feedback from schools? Are you actively getting that feedback from students?
You can just watch. So if you have a competing tension within, you have an hour to eat lunch and also within that hour are other opportunities. That's gonna play into your decision making. Yeah, students, you can see how students are making choices differently when you just go and watch. Student hasn't come up to me and said, hey, I would get lunch today, except that I have to go to this club. But you hear students talk about the fact that they do need to get votes. And so there's time pressure on them. Yeah.
What do we do? What's done at this? Are you part of the process of figuring that out at the school? Does
Yes.
the school kind of set to
Yes,
have to figure that out?
I am part of it, as is my colleague Nativity, very much so.
Okay. It was one of the main things that was like a shared thing from students that we referred to before. Curious to see if that, I don't know what's being done about that or what can possibly change about that in the future, maybe encourage and change the numbers of things at the same time. Probably just more of like a comment or something that I've been like I've gotten feedback on that. So wondering just the impact on the things that we're looking at right now. I want to thank all the AFSCME individuals that we have here today for coming and talking about the second chance breakfast, where it doesn't actually identify itself here. Can you tell me where that impacts what we were looking over today? And for some students, it seems it's also their actual breakfast in the morning.
So they have the opportunity. La Follette's the only one that has that.
Okay.
It still will continue that next year. It's not being.
Mhm.
We have about 138 average students that utilize that every day. So it's important to keep. We've tried it at other high schools. It has not gone so well. Just did it for, I think, Timothy helped me out. East did it for like 1 year.
East?
East had second chance breakfast for a short period of time and then it kind of got taken away. And then West and the Memorial never really got off the ground. So La Follette, they purposely put it in the curriculum time, an extra 5 minutes to make sure they make time for it. That's
I can't hear Nativity's answer. I'm sorry to interrupt, Scott. I just couldn't hear it.
I was saying that East did have it for a little while. I wasn't aware of why it stopped, but it did stop.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Scott. It was just a hearing
Oh, you're-
issue.
So what was the difference between the schools on just usability, and they tried it there, but why they needed it and then
The ones that, it can not work for many reasons, right? Timing between the curriculum, passing times, setup of schools. You got 3 big stories at East. It's much different than La Follette. It has a very centralized location. You kind of swing through quickly. There's lots of different challenges depending on the environment. La Follette's made a purposeful act for it, and they tried it, it's stuck, and it continues and will continue to stick. So there's just a lot of adaptation points. It's different, right? Every school has a different environment. So and different demographics and challenges. So Follette happens to be one that takes it. It's a great things for our students, right? And then when you talk about, add to your question about other setups at different schools, those are things that we see. We're observing school. Nativity does a great job getting out there and like, this takes too long. That's where an extra staff can be. Like, if we put a secondary service line in here, now we're getting more students free. We're opening up that environment. We're allowing students to see and get away with the grind of sitting there. I mean, no longer they're in lines, the more chance of behavioral issues, turn-ins from other students. So those are things like, how do we make this faster? Can we change a few setup things? And sometimes it's getting the trades involved. Hey, I need longer cords here. Give me some longer cords and let's set this up the right way. Versus the things that we have currently in our systems, right? So, and then we've done multiple access points in the mornings to some of our elementary schools to allow this participation to come in. Here you go. Oh, not just come here. So there's a lot of different environmental factors that go into that. Some of it is staffing.
Is it seen differently than breakfast that when we're looking at in here? How is it different than?
Participation at CEP schools is extremely low in most cases for breakfast. It's a huge opportunity for us. That's one of the things that we're pushing to capitalize, not only this year yet, is next year. Because we have students, you know, they come to the building, the buses to get the buses there on time. The buses have to be. So my group is also hammering, these buses have to be here on time. So that's been a big effort this year, and that's why they're showing up at 7:20. Just making sure we give them the access when they come in the door. And can we get them access points so they're not having to traverse across the school? So Tivity's team's got, I think Leopold's got 2 service points where we can get students here. They don't have to go all the way upstairs and go around, right? So we're really trying to maximize what we do to get those students out, because we know mid-morning, those students may have behavioral issues. That's a big part of that. So looking at breakfast side of this is huge. And we know by history and by data, if you get breakfast, you're going to get some lunch. Like it's just that natural carrying effect. So part of our move this year towards the end of this year is that data is becoming really useful for us to really tear it apart. It's looking at next year, how are we going to capitalize on making breakfast more available and get students to really get involved in that and naturally bring them.
I appreciate the breakdown of that, because I was trying to understand if it was more the family signing up, or is it a balance between the families that are identifying the programs that we're talking about there?
Part of it is accessibility for students to want to feel it, get it. The other side of it is the messaging, right? So we're working hard with Josh and Molly's team to really put the message out to the families using Parent Square through our principals apps, through our teachers, and really highlighting, eat breakfast. Breakfast is ready for you. Come on in, there's this today. Come on in, you know, eat socially together. Come on, let's do, and really start to drive that versus just leaving it to chance. Like whatever chance gets us.
Is that something that we started, you guys started doing it more this year?
We started a lot this year, especially the second half this year. We started really tearing data apart. And as we really dug into the data, now we're having principal conversations the last several weeks and really driving home the administrative benefits for this, for their school. 1, for title funding, and 2, what can it do for the behavior and the help of your students and your families? Message that, help us build community. We all know, Josh has heard it 1,000 times, food is the breaking or the melding between all communities and all life. Food is that. So we have to live on that and drive that culture through.
I totally, I've seen that in action. I was glad that Leland had coming here from a social worker. I've seen social workers be like a touch point for a lot of students that might also have a challenging time when they navigate their day, and just to come by and get a snack of some sort too. So I appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, board member. I really appreciate you leading into the conversation about participation. I think it's one of the more important conversations we could be having right now. It's nice to be in thought partnership around it. You started asking questions at 7:15 and you stopped at 7:24. Board member Nichols started at 7:10 and ended at 7:14. Board member Pearson, we are now gonna pass the conversation to you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't be in person today, so thank y'all for coming out and speaking. I also had a question about participation and how it kind of fits in with Scott, I think what you were talking about in terms of the focal point, really trying to drive participation around breakfast. So I got a chance to witness and be a part of the lines for Second Chance Breakfast. shout out to La Follette and to that team that has been working really hard to provide those breakfasts for students. I had a chance to just witness the good work and witness and hear from students as well as staff in many different areas. So not just the food service staff, but also some of the school security as well as counselors and other folks. So my question around it is that if we're looking to have a focal point on breakfast as a way to increase participation, the supports that are needed for that may be unique to the school. So, for instance, if La Follette has the second chance or second chance breakfast for their school, that may require more staff than if there's not like something similar at some of the other schools. So, when we're making those decisions about staffing levels and about for lack of a better term, allocations. When it comes to some of our meal programs and or initiatives that are innovative, very specific to the school, how do those kind of get decided around? To the point, is it that the building leaders are the ones that are making those decisions, the principals, or is it, them in collaboration with your team, Scott and Josh? So just, yeah, if you can talk to me about that, especially if we're trying to drive this participation for breakfast and also honor the innovation that schools have done to also increase their participation, but also just the need in finding solutions for the need that is within their schools that may be unique.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think that we talked about this a little bit ago, or Scott mentioned this, second chance breakfast is only happening at La Follette now. I think that I'd love to see that program go further. La Follette really sort of led the way and pushed ahead on second chance breakfast, and we've seen that in the numbers of students who are eating. It's not a time consuming program to execute. It's basically when we started pushing that message out and talking about it at the schools, just as the name would imply, it happens basically the default time that it happens is between first and second period. So like I got here in time for my class, but with no time to eat. So I'm going to try to get this during a passing period. And 5 minutes wouldn't be enough for that. So looking for some mental time to do that. As Scott also mentioned, there's some circumstances building to building that make that, it's not standard. So have to work with building to your question. Yeah, you have to work with building leadership to say, can you do this? Does this fit into your student flow into the building? Does it fit with your student behavioral patterns in the morning? Will it work for you to serve a second breakfast period between first and second? And then when we look at programs like this, everyone, including us, including food nutrition, has a set of resources to work within. And part of how we consider allocations is saying, what do we really want to get done across the entire district? And how can we do that most effectively, knowing we may have to move resources from one place to another? So as Scott said, we don't intend to discontinue second chance breakfast at La Follette, and we'll be working with the team there, including the school leadership team, to make sure we can still do.
No, I appreciate that answer, but I think what I'm trying to get at is that the levels of support that are needed for, and I'm not just speaking just about this program specifically, I'm just talking also too, what does it look like if scratch cooking is happening at New Mundo? What supports are needed for that to be able, to be successful and to increase the participation? So I'm thinking of like, if we know that certain schools have their unique, like have solutions to their unique situations, in their student bodies, is like how do the investments around those so that we can ensure that continues and then ultimately increases it. So if I'm speaking specifically for La Follette, if there's reduction in, for instance, food service staff, then how do some of the programs work out well. And then are there going to have to, I'm thinking if there's like reductions, then there's less availability for folks and for our kids to have access based off of the points that they have created and structure that they have created. It changes then the nature of the participation if we're trying to drive to participation. So when I'm thinking about when I'm asking that, it's more so of how we're kind of coming around schools to help support that. I think there was one school that wanted to, when I was supporting, I think it was at Mir, for the back to school for breakfast, and got to talk to the food service staff there, like, hey, like kids would really like X things, and this is what they mostly take. So then how do we kind of like support and build in that? So that's what I'm asking. I know that we're not going to cut that program. And I think that's important because, like you said, a lot of those kids that when I was talking to them, they were bus was late, they were late, or even, they couldn't get in. They went to their first period, but now they're in passing. Now they have to grab something. I asked some kids, hey, if you didn't get this, like, what would it feel like for you? They were like, hey, this is important. I wouldn't probably eat to lunch, but realistically, I probably wouldn't eat lunch either because the lines are too long. And now I'm going to just wait until I have dinner. And hey, maybe I'm not even going to have dinner because we all know the state of our country right now in terms of food access. And so I'm just trying to understand how we holistically have the conversation as a district around food and nutrition and ensuring our kiddos have access to the food. But then how do we also within that are able to support the unique needs at certain schools that may have, um, we have some schools that have large demographics of Hmong students. How are we making sure that we're coming around and supporting that? Like, especially if we want to, I know that we've talked extensively as a board around scratch cooking and the importance of that. And I know that's something that I really care about and have been very open and expressed that widely. If we're trying to get to that point, what are the necessary things that we need to invest in to ensure that happens? And if we know that kids want food that is made at school, how do we support that and what investments are needed in that? That drives participation. And so that's where I'm getting at. I know that we're not cutting the program, which is great, but also changes to how the program is run for the sake of uniformity, again, for lack of a better term, creates the possibility that it will lessen the impact that we want it to have. And that goes in place with other schools as well. I don't know if someone wants to respond to that, but I know that was a long-winded comment, but you don't have to respond, but I wasn't sure because I'm not in the room.
I'll just state something. We understand what you're getting at and 100% is true. One of the things that in our conversation with administrators of the individual buildings and their associate superintendents, we're having those bridges of, here, we heard this from this particular principal, it works really well for them. Here's their data set showing and indicating that. So backing up, then teaching them maybe a new principle about how they're kind of navigating their building, how it works, is giving them tips and tricks of what make them successful. Also the trip ups of where the things are failing at, and be able to pull multiple examples and having individualized conversations, but also having a two-way conversation about this works really well over here, and sharing some of their data points as well. It's not to say competition, but you always don't want to be outshined that I'm a CEP school, I'm at 60%, and this person's doing 80%. What are they doing? And like having tips and trying to understand what that means and getting their staff engaged. You all have different staffing levels. But as a district, we don't have like a uniform, y'all shall have 5, assistants in there. It's kind of individualized in their building. So So we have a little bit more uniformity, but we can still maximize what we can do, having what we learned today to use and apply for tomorrow.
Thank you for that. I will say, I was very thoroughly impressed by the second chance breakfast. I was there from start to finish, even stayed at lunch. They had one line. That line was all like wrapped around. It was very long. I probably wouldn't even have stayed in the line. So kudos to the kids who do. And kudos, like I said, again, kudos to the food service staff that at La Follette, because they really do work hard and have the passion in making sure to feed our children. If we can go to one of the slides with the graphs there. I think it was the one about, yeah, this one here. If we know that Muir and Whitehorse are, I know we're kind of like thinking about current CEP average is about 50%, and we want to do Muir and Whitehorse. What does it look like in terms of adding like our high schools to that? And I know that they're somewhat under, but I wonder like what it looks like to add them as a CEP and what that might look like in terms of the expansion of participation. Because part of, again, as a high school mom, well, no, a mom of high schoolers, definitely not a high school mom, a mom of high schoolers, I also forget to fill out my form. And actually, me kind of shadowing some of the food service at different schools, I filled out my form. I was like, oh, shoot, I need to do that. And so, what kind of efforts? I know we focus a lot on elementary and trying to drive the participation, but I do think there's some opportunities at our high school to do that, especially if we know that La Follette and East, these schools, many of the schools that are CEP schools currently actually feed into La Follette and East. And yeah, so talk to me about like maybe adding what it might look like adding the high schools, La Follette and East, to the Muir and Whitehorse, and where that, like what that would look like in terms of number wise, especially because those schools are the feeder patterns, high schools, the high schools of the feeder pattern where most of our CEP schools are concentrated currently.
I think that's there are particular scenarios like adding East or La Follette that we could look at and we could put together those scenarios for you.
That would be helpful.
I will say, given that CEP looks at total identified student percentage, with the high schools, that's going to be a lot of students in the denominator. And then a lower percentage in the numerator, so it would bring the district-wide rate down somewhat. And given that, they're historically lower levels of participation, I'm sure there would be a cost associated with that, but that's certainly something that we can run for you.
Yeah, I would appreciate that if we could have that scenario. I think it is helpful as we have the conversation. And then the last thing I will say is like I'm in full support of us just making our district, and I've said this before, CEP, I think it's a worthy investment. I know that it's a lot. I know the conversation is then for us to figure out what things we are going to need to maybe not do or adjust or step away from to make way for that. But to me, feeding kids is really important. And I think it's a worthy investment. And I'm also eager to have the conversation of like how we're what kind of analysis that we are having around our programs, their effectiveness and whatnot. What things that we do need to maybe sunset to be able to feed our kids. So I'm in 100% full support of going that route, but I understand where we are budgetarily and where we need to hold our state and others accountable, especially since food access is going to become even a bigger problem as the state has lowered their food share thresholds and continue to. So thank you all. That's it for me, Ali.
Maya, you started at 7:25 and it is now 7:40. I have about 4 questions. So the first question, I'm gonna direct all of these questions at our superintendent, Dr. Joe Gothard, and I welcome you kind of pointing them in the right direction. I've heard you speak to several issues related to open campus lunch. And I am curious if you think that's an area that we want to adjust strategically for a variety of reasons in terms of participation in our programs and, you know, safety concerns and overall like academic kind of emphasis.
Chair Muldrow, members of the board, I think, to start out with, these have not been widespread conversations. So it might be rather surprising to some that I'm going to address your question, but it might be surprising to some that we're having this conversation. It would require first, I think, some deep conversations in the community. You know, I'm looking at a few MMSD grads who we all experienced open lunch, and you know, that's quite a legacy in Madison. Hard to change. And I think we'd have to align schedules. We'd have to modify schedules. We have to look at additional spaces for cafeteria space for young people to eat.
Yeah.
Service lines, additional staffing, additional food capacity. So I mean, it would require quite a bit of study. I think for me, and that's just one piece. Nutrition services is one piece of it. The other thing would be what additional barriers might be put in place if we get away. One lunch is something that, gosh, we started before I left in 2013. And it does bring with it some really nice advantages in terms of times that students can participate in clubs, can get additional help, can maybe meet with the teacher during office hours. So there are some really inherent benefits to that too. So to me, it would be part of a larger conversation about plus Delta. And I think lastly, just looking at student safety and well-being in terms of keeping students in our supervised structured environments, not hopping in cars and, you know, going through the community, you know, getting into potentially risky situations in the community. These are things that I have plenty of experience at in terms of whether it's Walgreens on Monona Drive or in the neighborhood near La Follette. Plenty of times at lunch, we were responding to things out in the community that perhaps could have been approached students. But also looking at just student engagement in general as well. You know, would there still be this idea that I'm out of here? You know, for some open campuses, that reprieve, that breath of fresh air that they might need too. So there's a lot to weigh that I think before I would say, let's do this, it would be large community engagement around how would we phase it in and why are we doing it?
I really appreciate you speaking to the cultural phenomena that is open campus lunch and what it means to students and families. And I think it looks very different at different schools based on what is available in the immediate community. And I know for my student at East, it is a lot of kids busing partly down East Wash and getting food and coming back. And I have told folks like, I thought I was pretty talented in the classroom until I had a class 5th hour and realized like, it's just a really different experience to have folks coming back halfway through the class from Taco Bell and like
With tacos.
yeah, you know, and that like negotiation happening in your classroom. And so I understand the complexity of it and I think it's worth exploring. And I greatly appreciate that. I think you have hinted that it might be something we want to take into consideration strategically.
Sure, if I could mention, you know, the flip is true as well. In a district that has all closed campus, to bring up the notion of open campus, same kind of reaction. So it's fascinating to experience this on both ends of it and vastly different, you know, in schools that have closed campus and obviously our schools that are open.
I really appreciate that. I think there's a lot to consider and I hope we're able to continue to engage in this conversation thoughtfully. Growing our own food options and using the district's land, there are several large the district has purchased acreage around the community with the intention of our own district growth. However, some of that hasn't been realized. Could we utilize that land to cultivate our own food and look to programs that are more self-sustaining in terms of kind of locally growing food, locally purchasing food? I've said before, that I believe we should have a policy that prioritizes locally sourced nutrition, including and like very specifically milk. Talk to me a little bit about if we could use our land to grow food and have a more self-sustaining system in relationship to food.
I'll have Scott outsourcing. Josh, if you want to chime in as well, just in terms of some of the local opportunities.
I'll adjust the land piece. Part of it, there are still within neighborhoods, so part of it's commission. Doing the access to use that land, and you have to also have the ability to do the agriculture part, right? So is it a possibility? Yes, to do it on scale, to do something, it'd be very difficult. You have to keep pests down, you have to keep the garden, and there's dedicated folks to do it. Our local garden communities, but to do it to the scale that we'd have to do it, we would strip it all clean in like 2 days. And then you have vegetation left. Then how do you turn the cycle over? Because the volume of them. Is it option A for small pieces? Yes, we do a lot of that through our local partners, and I'll let Josh talk about our local partners to treat.
Yeah, I think just to follow along a little bit on what Scott was talking about too. Second largest district in the state. It's a non-negotiable that we have to feed those 2 meals each day. And so when we've been approached, for example, by local farmers, I think some do and some don't recognize like, oh, I could actually sell you the beef you need. No, I can't. I'm just not in that kind of business where that's the volume that you need. And to be fiscally responsible too. There's some really good growers in the state I've talked to. Some of the things I grow are absolutely for direct to consumer. It's not good for a wholesale market. It's not what I'm trying to do. But I think if we were to consider anything like this, and whether it's our own land or somebody else's, to say, and I have said to local growers, I don't really want you to break your business model for me because I have high volume needs and maybe I could incorporate some of what you do. But as you know, as everybody who shops the Madison Farmers Market knows, there's this long-standing institution where local growers can have a direct consumer relationship. Sometimes that's their best pricing. And so I will say, maybe you can sell something to me, but I don't want you to change your business model because if anything, Scott, I just cleaned you out. Unexpectedly, we saw participation jump by 6 points. I just cleaned you out 6 months before you thought, and you don't have a market now. So I'm really trying to be sensitive, not to be evasive, but to be sensitive to how a small grower can or cannot relate well to a district this size, while taking advantage of some opportunities. So I think those are challenges, whether it's our own land or somebody else's who's running a business.
No, I really appreciate the consideration of those factors. And even when I think of large scale commercial entities in the state of Wisconsin, things like Organic Valley or things that are more associated with organic products, I do think our district size is a compromising element of that kind of source. I think the same thing is true for growing our own food. However, I really do hope that we look to Berkeley and the project that Alice Waters did out there with the edible classroom, and their middle school's ability to raise the vast majority and grow the vast majority of that district's food.
And I will add to that, like one of the things that we're doing like Shabazz High School, we're putting in that new referendum work, there are some specific spots. But then to do that growing on site, they'll maintain that right into their culinary class, really engage in that full agricultural piece to table something that's part of that educational piece then.
I really appreciate that, and I'm deeply inspired by that work. And I also think that there are school districts around the country that just don't have the acreage or access to land. Like there is no green space outside the school, and we have it and we should leverage it in meaningful ways. And I appreciate that we have the inclination to do that at the scale that makes sense for us at this point. I would love to see us do composting at breakfast and lunch. I know you all know that about me. I don't think we need to like engage in discussion about it, but if it can happen, I will fully support it. My last question is, I know you all spend a lot of time preparing to talk with us as a board, and I'm sure there are questions you're hoping we ask you that we don't ask you. Is there anything you didn't get to talk about that you really want to make sure our community knows about these meals? Little plug for like letting us sample breakfast food next time. Just saying, like, I could get down with like a French toast stick at this meeting. So anything we haven't asked about or talked about that you all are hoping to make the community aware of this evening?
I would say we're always trying to not say reinvent, but also bring back what some of the popular things are. We need participation from our families to try it one time. To give us a chance for what it was to what it can be. We're always trying to be culturally appropriate. We're also trying to expand the palate of our students, not just chicken nuggets and French fries. There are other things in the world. And right. Two things we know are hits, but also we want to expand their creativity. We also want to explore their worlds that maybe the parents wouldn't do. Well, we want to get them culturally adapted, like really like in the city that has all kinds of choices in this town that we're trying to bring forward. So for us, it's give your student an opportunity to try our meal. Let them try it and not just one time. Like it could be different the next time just because of this environment or what it happens to be. So our goal is to try to get our community to eat and to bridge that gap in culture and support.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for speaking to it. Did you have something?
The only thing I would add is something that I've gained from talking to other school districts, some of whom are doing a phenomenal, huge amount of scratch cooking, high quality food. All of them seem to struggle with awareness of the program. I presented not that long ago to a PTO group and they were delighted to hear about the new entrees. And they also said, I'm so happy to hear you're doing this. And I had no idea. So I think there are a lot of, and I've heard that from other districts too, including districts you would think your reputation in this city must be a mile wide. You're doing public events. You have, no, they're all facing the same thing is disengagement from the community who says this is school food and I'm disengaged from it. And when they hear about it, they're generally very pleasantly surprised. And we're always trying to ramp up the amount of polling we're doing, the amount of engagement we're doing. But the only thing I would say I haven't talked about is the more community members can engage with us, say, what are you doing coming up with the menus? What's going into that food? What would be the dishes you're most proud of that are the minimally processed dishes you want us to know about? There's just a lot of people who don't know what we're doing.
Thank you all so much for this conversation. I started asking questions at 7:41. It's now 7:52, and we will move into our final conversation. I'm sorry, Board Member Mosner fell up.
Can you just remind us what happens when a child goes to have a meal at school and they have a negative balance in their school cafe account?
They're served a meal.
Thank you.
Sure.
Really, really important last note.
Yeah.
Thank you for speaking
We
to
will
that.
need discussions on what the board will need or direction for the CEP program for next year by the June board meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. We need to submit that form by July.
We need to submit the form by June. So I think we're hoping for this direction on this sooner rather than later.
No later than the June.
All right, we will provide direction beforehand. Thank you. We are now moving on to our final conversation of the evening, which is about the budget. I'm sorry, Board Member Pearson, is your hand back up?
No, I just quickly just asked, were we gonna look to bring it, like get the memo for the high schools added, just like in an email or update or something? Or were they gonna look to bring it to us in the May regular board meeting?
I think we'll run the scenarios and we'll give it to you as a board memo to give you time to think about it.
Okay, that was it. Thank you, Ali.
Okay, we'll talk about the 26-27. We have a few more priority projects in the proposed budget that all have copies of. We'll load that proposed budget to the website tomorrow. All goes well. One of those presentations when I'm so happy and thankful the team got the May proposed budget, but every year this budget's going to change. even more now if the legislature passes legislation that day by the governor of the Senate. So that's good news for us because it'll identify some more revenue. But then that will say there's gonna be some. But okay, our timeline, what's not normal is states on the budget. And we've got legislation that's gonna be coming up this week again, like, so I wanted to push for us to benefit the Madison Metropolitan School District. The proposal that's been discussed, I know some people aren't entirely thrilled with it, but I think it's good. It's good for our district, it's good for our taxpayers, so. I hope they do adopt the budget. They want to give more, that's great too, but I like what's in there for the district in terms of our budget for 26-27, and really goes a long way to allow us to continue that balanced budget. When we get the June budget for you and then fall budget. It's a significant thing. There's been a couple of questions on again, off again about where are we at with our fund balance and the percent or the board policy. I want to remind the board, I don't do a calculation until the fall budget per the board policy. In particular, the biggest thing is right now we have an approved budget. We're coming close to the end of the fiscal year. It's going to be into July before I know our final expenditures and the final revenues. So then I'll use that information, start angling us towards where I think that will be, where we're heading towards the fall. But then again, I just want to remind everybody on this timeline, it's not until October 15th do we get our final state aid certified and our revenue limit, which is based on the third Friday of September. So I will say we have information on where we've approved the budget for 25-26. We're within the board policy. I believe we will continue to be within the board policy. If I ever think we're not going to be, definitely be notifying y'all that we might have some issues. Our revenue streams, as I said, the proposal that's out there will change considerably in terms of potentially identifying 20 million plus new revenues, combination of the new general aid that's been created for us, and also a special education reimbursement rate going up to 50% in 26-27. So that'll have impacts in terms of where we are sitting, what available revenue we have to potentially spend. And so we'll continue to talk more about it. One of the big assumptions I've made for revenue limits and continue to make that I started in January is I am assuming flat enrollments in terms of the revenue limit calculation. So a combination of our summer school, third Friday, September, and then independent charters. But our revenue limit assumption of the proposed budget says we're going to be the same. Now, I hope and expect us to be higher. Sure, I want that to be. We've invested considerably in 4K the last few years. I think we're offering some other programs, but that's an assumption that's critical for us to know and understand in terms of the numbers behind our budget. Okay, revenue limit is the 3-year rolling average, which is going to be a 4-year number for this new general aid that's proposed. It has not been adopted yet. That the finance committee will take a look at tomorrow and hopefully get some floor votes on Wednesday. So I haven't run the final numbers what I think it's going to be, but I won't know that for certain anyways because it includes the third Friday, September of 2026 count in terms of the numbers that will become available for us. But I know what the last 3 years are, so I can get pretty close. Okay. Which is why I say it's about, $10-11 million, I think, in terms of property tax reduction. So this is a slide where I show the 3-year rolling limit average, which in all for intents and purposes for the last 3 years, we have been flat. So I think saying we're going to be flat another year is pretty conservative in terms of that's just the way the numbers have been looking. And then this is really a reflection of just what we knew with the May budget, and that is an estimate on the revenue limits. That's not including the additional funds that was presented this morning from the governor. And then those corresponding revenue limit projections, which in terms of this proposed budget, really isn't gonna change the total revenues available if it's approved, but it will change the tax level, right? If it goes through, we're gonna have more state aids that will reduce dollar for dollar the property tax impact that I'll be talking about at the end of. Right now, under current law, I'm still projecting about a $7 million drop in our general aids. And this proposal would increase and offset that $7 million drop, I believe. But we won't be doing any projections until we get some actual legislation. And it's approved, right? And the governor signs it. Okay, now we're gonna move into priority projects. I wanna say, in terms of the proposed budget, everything that we've talked about the last 4 months in terms of operations work group, including Mary's presentation on tonight on Madison School and Community Recreation, and Chet's discussion of Chromebooks, laptops, and software increases that are necessary, along with the building services piece that Scott's gonna talk about, are all incorporated in the proposed budget that you have before. Okay. The only major thing that we've talked about, because we don't have numbers yet, come up with some solid estimates, is the study that's happening right now on our compensation structure schedule. And we hope to get that, I think within 2 weeks, enough time for us to take a look at incorporating to the June budget, right? So we have a balanced budget right now, inclusive of all the things we've talked about needing to spend on. On this slide, I want to talk about some revisions we made after our last meeting in discussion of trying to maintain a balanced budget with our revenue estimates and our cost expenditures. We, senior administration, met with the teams and we made some changes. One, when I initially presented an unallocated pool of 10 FTE, we've reduced that to 5. That cuts that estimate in half in terms of suspending. The school safety provision that our director presented to you included 9 FTE in the purchase of 4 vehicles. We've pared that back to really phase in that implementation over a few more years to 6 FTE and 2 vehicles. And then finally, the parental leave expansion of benefits. We initially were budgeting 3 FTE. We reduced that to 2 FTE under the assumption that the parental leave, which is going to be presented separately in terms of the handbook committee meeting with MTI and the unions in terms of that language that'll be presented later. But those costs are all in the proposed budget that is balanced right now. Okay. So with that, Mary's gonna lead us off. I'm gonna give her the clicker and pass it on. It's the power that you have. Mary's gonna run down through the increased expenditures for Madison School Community Rec, and then an update on the MSCR West expansion and a reminder of what that is.
All right, point of clarification, what you're going to present on is embedded in the proposed budget.
Correct.
Great.
All right, thank you, Bob. Thank you, board members. So I have a little bit of information about increased cost estimates for 26-27 in Fund 50 and specific to MSCR. So first up on your list is the CPI for all full-time staff in Fund 80. So that does extend beyond MSCR. So that's steps plus CPI increases for our full-time staff. The next line we have is our seasonal staff salaries. So as we've continued to expand and see sustained participation and growth, specifically in after-school and school-based programs where we don't have a lot of capacity to raise revenue, we're seeing an incremental need to increase budget for seasonal staff wages. So that represents about a 1.4% increase in our seasonal staff wages. And then we get to our MSCR West project and our construction project, which the big number in here at $1 million for this 26-27, that number would be dependent on final project bid on the project as well as private fundraising. So to give you a little bit of a refresher on MSCR West, since it's been a while since we've talked about it. You may recall back in late in 2024, we purchased the property adjoining MSCR West with the intention of building it out to be an expansion of our very heavily used MSCR West project to incorporate a warm water pool as well as a full-size gymnasium. So since September of this year, we've been working with our architecture and engineering team to design that project. The RFP, the design is complete. The RFP hit the street April. So we are now waiting to get those bids back toward the end of May. At which point we'll have a better understanding of sort of the hard numbers associated with it. But based on our estimates, we are estimated project cost between $9 and $9.4 million. Currently we have $8.4 million in the Fund 80 balance that we're allocating toward this project, which would leave us with that increased levy at $1 million. Our current timeline for the project would be construction roughly September 26th through September. And one of the things that has driven some of the cost on the project is that we have really intentionally tried to incorporate some current and future incremental sustainability measures to support the district's goals that we were speaking about with Referendum and Brianna earlier. So things including heat pumps in the pool design so that we're not using gas heating in the pools because electrification of pool heating is exorbitantly expensive to operate and we would bankrupt ourselves. So looking at setting ourselves up as much as we can with a reuse project in an older building to be able to support those future goals as well. So that's where we're at. It's a really exciting project. It's been really wonderful to see it sort of come to fruition with our vision and be able to really meet some needs we're unable to meet in our existing spaces. And then finally, I have a quick slide. Just wanted to capture a snapshot of some of we do have some other budgeted increases in expenses that we are able to offset with program revenue. So generally within MSCR, we try to be really frugal with our funding and where possible, when we have budget needs, utilize our revenue from participant fees to help offset those. So some of the things that are included in that are some increased costs with our lease renegotiation at MSCR East, which is our smaller programs facility on the east side, increased costs to produce our program guide, bank charges, which are just a direct result of people actually registering for things. And then looking at upgrading one of our vehicles. We do have an in-house maintenance carpenter, so upgrading one of our vehicles and maintaining our fleet, as well as then the direct program expenses that we incur within our budget. So with that, I will pass it off to Chet.
Right. The increase in costs that we're seeing on the Chromebook and the laptop side is very much related to the memory usage in data centers that are going up all over the country and the use of AI. Those data centers are grabbing the memory, and the cost for memory left for us to buy as far as devices go is increased tremendously. When we buy Chromebooks, we do buy a warranty with it. We buy the Google license and white glove services, which is the setup of the Chromebook. And we do a 4-year warranty on those. The cost per unit with the Chromebook from last year to this year is $118 increase. Normally that's like $20. So it has been exponentially increased, which has increased what we're spending. The laptops themselves, we're buying the exact same laptop we bought last year. Exact same spec, exact same model. The increase has been $345,000 over 1 year. That's some of the costs that we're dealing with as far as device and hardware procurement. That cost is going to stay there. We talk with vendors and they're like, they don't see it going down probably for another 2 years if it does go down. In fact, it'll probably go up. Some laptops that we had spec'd out for Bob's department, the bid on it was only good for 9 days. After that 9 days, the price increased, so we had to spend more money. Our vendors are basically, I had to fight to get 30 days on a quote. valid for 30.
Somebody sent a quote that was only good for 9 days.
Yep, that's the world we're living in right now as far as hardware. And vendors look at me when I say, oh, I need 30 days because we have a board process we have to go through. And they go, well, we'll see what we can do. So that's some of the stuff we're dealing with to keep this rolling. Software costs are increasing as well. Google hadn't increased our costs for years. They have come back now, and now they're going to start charging for staff. They used to only charge for students. Now they're charging for both staff and students. So our software costs are also increasing. Our virtual server environment, the software we use there called VMware was bought out by Broadcom, and Broadcom has been increasing the price by $50K every year. We are looking to replace that product, but we still have to keep it going. So software costs are going up. They're not going up as bad as hardware costs are, but they are increasing, and we are seeing bumps on the software side as well. So this next slide just basically goes over what I had talked about as far as our Chromebook and laptop costs.
Technology.
It's a $900 clicker. Tomorrow it's $1,300, you know?
Could be.
There's no way.
59.
I'm just, you gotta watch all those pennies, like you said.
Building services, we're asking for about a $3 million increase overall, before you scream at me. Utilities and custodial supplies, this is a rollover budget from about 2018, 2019. So it has not been increased over a series, obviously through COVID and all of the world that we're living in. So a lot of this is based upon fuel costs are going through the roof. As everybody knows, we have a lot of petroleum-based products, cleaning products, paper products. That's the majority of that bulk. So what we paid for toilet paper 7 years ago, we don't know what the store. So that's the major push on the custodial and utility supplies, including electricity, as we all know, is through the roof, and gas is also skyrocketing. So we've had some budget savings over the years, which help buffer some of that. But in the past 18 months, those what we're saving years ago, what is reality now with those utilities is not true anymore. So that's a big chunk of our ask. Fleet vehicle electrification and replacement, just some details behind that. We have several vehicles we have not done anything in over 13 years, including our major plow trucks. We've got nearly 85,000 miles, heavy use, heavy ability. Imagine your car 85,000 miles of pushing giant snow hills everywhere. So they are getting end of life. We don't want to have our staff playing Fred Flintstone on the road. Although they've done that in the past, we don't want to do that for our folks. And while we do that, anything that can be electrified, we will electrify. Unfortunately, larger duty trucks do not have electrification abilities yet. The batteries would be burned up within an hour. But we do have vehicles in our smaller vehicle fleet that are at 13 years, 10-year life, reaching the point of we're putting a lot of maintenance into them, and the optimal time to place them to the electrification is now. And kind of working through that cycle. We have about 90 vehicles in our fleet. We know we're going to probably drop down 8 or 10 vehicles just because we've got a little too many at some point. So we'll use them as trade value to offset these costs. But buying a car used to be $20,000 in the past. Now there's $65,000, $70,000, $80,000 in trucks with plows are a lot. They're $90,000. So plows last longer, which is good, but it is not a fun world we live in, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. So there's a longer term. We have a 5-year kind of replacement cycle, and then we'll kind of optimize as we're really getting smart with our money. There's an optimal replacement cycle for vehicles, but we have to get there. Like it's been kind of left for a long period of time. So we want to kind of work through that and ultimately bring the number down, and then get to a more frequent returning cycle. That way we don't have to put chunks in at the time. Doesn't affect the vehicles, or doesn't help us when we try to budget things through the life of the vehicles. Next topic, transportation. We all know cost of transportation continue to go up, escalation to CPI index. In addition to adding routes, UHTs, adding expanding capabilities in our district. So including special education reimbursement or special education transportation, we're gonna see about a $1.1 million increase to spend this year. That's kind of what we expected. It's just part of the escalation point. And then the Fund 50 supplies and operations, we're around about $2.5 million of debt, as we know, and continue to fight every single day and every purchase that we make to offset that. But we are already seeing early preliminary costs of coming in for fuel prices and beef prices. If we have a really bad summer, this $450,000 will go pretty fast. But we are expecting those prices to keep coming through as we continue to have to get things in all of our programs. Overall, $3.12 million. In the next slide, we'll also kind of break down the numbers too, if you have any more questions. We're hoping that 450 doesn't turn into something different. USDA, we did expect a little bit of drop in USDA fundings. That's part of that number. But if he does a drastic slash, that 450 up 600, just depending what legislation wants to do. We're hoping not. Legislation has some power over the president when it comes to that, but see what they adopt. Then
Board member. Can I just ask a quick fine question on the building services?
Yeah.
You go back to that one slide. This does not include the CEP conversation that we just had.
The bottom of this slide has more detail. The budget that Fund 50, the proposed budget, does not include any expansion of the CEP programs. Right, so we've assumed straightforward, even though the application is up. So
Okay.
that would have to change depending on the exact numbers of schools that we have in and their direct cert percentage. That needs to be accounted. We also haven't accounted for any potential cuts in federal reimbursement. A little bit less in federal revenues in the proposed budget, but not a 20% reduction if it happened. The USDA has not put out the new rates.
You guys just said that. Yeah. Then I guess I'm sorry, Aljo, can I just to clarify? I thought the presentation that we just had on the CEP program and schools was that it cost us 2.7 to just kind of make a set of schools be, so that was.
Why? We went to a CEP district wide.
Oh, no.
Cost us 2.7.
I missed that. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay.
again, threshold of participation too.
Right, because you have some schools that have way higher, some that are lower, and then it kind of averages out.
6 and the percentage, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know why I thought that was more like a cost to continue based on a variety of factors happening, maybe at the federal level and then changing demographics in our schools.
If cost to continue is about the 2.5 negative deficit we currently run.
Okay.
And up to $450,000 of additional cost because we're seeing cost inflations for food. We're trimmed a lot of stuff to keep it neutral, and now we're like, we've tapped out what opportunities we had, and now it's where we are.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Board Member Nichols, you started asking questions at 8:15. It is now 8:19, and we will resume the presentation.
Good. So this is just an overview of the projected impacts in terms of the proposed budget. So I've already mentioned the revenue limit is all about student enrollment projections. We're assuming flat enrollment, no increase, no decrease, flat for 26-27, which is really the third Friday, September 2026. Just a reminder in terms of where we are at with our revenue limit, and a shout out to the community. That's $100 million over 4 years. This budget includes the $20 million approved by voters for this fall. A reminder, because some of the proposal that's being discussed right now would actually increase our state general aid, which would be a dollar for dollar reduction in the property tax that we have in the proposed budget. So when money comes within the revenue limits, you don't get any new money to spend. You just change from property taxes to state aid, which is a good thing for us, right? It helps our overburdened taxpayers in Madison. Then the assumption is in terms of the 325 per member, that's still part of law and is not, there was some discussion, you know, the Republicans wanted to move that. That's not happening. That's still in the current law and there's no proposal to remove that. For 7. And then categorical aid at 742, as we've talked about, that is not at all. So we've assumed the 742 categorical comes to that. This is important stuff. I totally understand that. So the proposed budget before you, and again, if you look at the first bullet point in the small letters, the last sentence in there, I say we will be making proposed budget. Knew that when I was preparing the proposed budget, and which is true no matter what's going on, but even more true that they can be more the day after this morning's announcements. But the proposed budget has a total levy increase of 39.9. For comparison, that's more than half of the levy that we did this year in terms of increase for about the funds levy. So this is only 0.34% increase on levy, just short of 40 million in total. Fund 10, debt service, our capital expansion fund, and the community service levy increase that tonight. That is part of the proposed budget. Just a couple of highlights in terms of that. The mill rate is only going up 0.22 or 22 cents. It's a 2.21% increase in the tax rate. The average home in the city of Madison, I'm projecting to be, well, the city assessor's office has projected the average home to be equal to $500,300, which is an increase of 3.95%. So this proposed budget on the taxes for us on the average Madison homeowner will increase by just shy of $305 or a 6.25% increase compared to last year's tax bill on that average home. Okay. And then this is even more complicated, but a different way of trying to look at it. But this brings out the same levy impact. It shows a mill rate by Fund 10. It shows the mill rate associated with our debt service. So it's the mill rate associated with our capital projects referendum and also our Fund 80 levy, right? And then here on the bottom right corner, you can see the average home in the city of Madison, 500,300 compared to last year at 481,300. That's at 3.95% increase. And then there's the estimated tax bill based on the proposed levies in the budget of $305 on the average home. And that, just a reminder where we are at. I will load the proposed budget to the website tomorrow. We began taking feedback through our processes, mainly Let's Talk in March. We talked about a process for board amendments to be able to incorporate into the June preliminary budget. We had the deadlines that were talked about here. We did not have any budget amendments submitted by any board members to this timeline in terms of the process that we laid out, which is fine. And again, this was just a budget amendment timeline for the June preliminary budget, right? It just allowed us to be able to analyze it and come up with costs. Clearly, the board can move an amendment anytime. I don't have to tell you, your board members. But it was just a process we had to come up with some fiscal estimate and what we didn't have. All right, questions? Turn it to the remote.
Questions from the board about our budget? Board member Mosner Feltham.
Thanks. Thank you. Congratulations. Also big news this morning.
Yeah.
My question is, what can we expect to see next as the announcement for this morning becomes clearer and as the results from the compensation study become clearer? I got a lot of emails and texts today that said, we've been talking about salary compression all year. Where is it? And so I'm trying to get clarity to be able to respond to those folks. What can we expect to see next? around making those decisions.
Chairman, Mr. Feltham, I think there's a few things to bring into this discussion. We're still on time for what I had presented, in the fall
Totally.
with our team.
Yep.
It's important for us to all remember that the salary compression is the way we're approaching it is a compensation study. And there's three main aspects to that. The first of which being a compensation philosophy for MMSD. That is, how are we going to compensate our employees, both those that are here and those that might be incoming, and make sure that we are all in line across all of our units, all of our groups, all of our assignments. The second piece is for us to analyze our current structures. What does our pay schedule, what do our salary schedules look like? Are they effective? Do they work? Do they inherently lead to some of the things that we're trying to correct? And what can be done to possibly fix them? To fix them comes our third part. What is the financial impact? What are the recommendations and the financial note that it would take to correct that? Is it something we want to do all at once? Is it something we want to phase in? Is there a way to work collaboratively to do this? And we're just not at that point yet. We're working hard on number one and number two to present information and data to the board, so that we can begin to move this forward as to the board's direction.
Yep. So when can I expect to see those recommendations so that we can start talking about what that looks like
By the June Board of Education.
We should have information for the June operations work group. That's when I'll
To
come
lay
back.
out, yep.
Yeah, to lay out some options, some costs. That's when hopefully that this piece of legislation is adopted this week or so thereafter. Then I'll have updates on state aids in terms of revenue. Updates on special education reimbursement, which will impact the general fund transfer, right?
You're
Those are
telling me
all-
5 weeks from now. We should have those numbers to talk about. And I'm like a little bit frustrated. Cause every time we've been in this conversation, I've said, at least for myself, and I know my colleagues, many of us have also said, this is a priority. I respect and appreciate the need for increased software and to electrify the fleet. But I feel like I've said again and again that like, if we're waiting and seeing, I want to wait and see on that stuff. And so it's jarring for me after months and months and months talking about it to see it not here. And I know it's jarring for other people who watch, who are not waiting for you to upload it because they saw it on board docs. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to really look forward to seeing that. And sort of like getting through that next phase of making that right.
Board Member Moser felt
Yeah.
this is from the very beginning, May has been the target.
Yeah.
So we're on target.
Yep.
And I think regardless of what happened at 11 o'clock this morning, it hasn't changed our perspective. I mean, it really hasn't. Now, it could lead to different recommendations based on where we get, but I think all along, I have known what the direction was to me. It's just a matter of arriving at the right place, right information.
Okay. And your sense is like, it's like a 3-week difference. Kind of, is that right?
I'm pushing as hard as I can to get the information, knowing that any change we make to a salary schedule isn't just gonna be an impact this year.
Yep.
It's going to be a forever impact on us, and I just want us to be thoughtful about making sure that I'm setting MMSD up for a sustainable future too.
Yep.
That honors employees with compensation.
I also want that. That's my only comment. I started with thank you and congratulations, and I'll end with thank you and congratulations.
All right, Board Member Sarava.
I want to highlight the special education reimbursement rate change. Just kind of been waiting for that thing to move since my daughter started school. And I just looked at that's double than what it was when she first started, which is crazy considering Wisconsin used to have 60% way back in the day. That we're slowly etching very, very near there. And I'm excited to see like what does that mean going forward? maintaining it and having the same expectations after that as well. So I'm glad to see where that is, but really excited to see like exactly what your feedback is going to be and like what does that mean for Madison specifically, just 'cause all districts operate differently. And yeah, I'll be paying lots of attention towards Canuck and like, thank you for giving us a really nice layout of how everything is as well, because though everything is complicated, I like how you're gonna bring in just stuff and putting it out there and walking us through all the really complicated stuff. So I appreciate that. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was at the very beginning, talking about the revisions and the school safety changes that were being put in there. I really wanted that to start off where it originally was. I was kind of conflicted when that was being put on the table to be cut. How do we, like,
Oh, I wasn't sure what you were talking about.
sorry,
For Mercer Bravo,
Yeah.
you're referring to the Office of Safety, School Safety,
Yeah.
proposal for additional FTE and vehicles.
Yeah.
I think, you want me to respond or were you finished?
yes,
Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was following the specific line item. I think a few things. This is a huge cultural shift for MMSD. And with that, I think Director Morris and all of us recognize that it is going to take some time. I think it would be really challenging to say, here is that total allocation and we're gonna go out and hire it and get it right from the very beginning. That's one way you could do it. The other way you could do it is, as we are, gradually hire and make sure we identify the right people, we have the right supports in place, and that we can implement that in a really good way and then build on it. And I think that, I think I think this is going to be a good implementation for us. Remember, we're adding resources that we've never had.
Mhm.
And I think there's some great excitement. I know Director Morris and a lot of our schools don't even know because they've never had this kind of support. So I just think I think it's a good place for us to begin.
I want to see that do really well. So as I had concerns about it being shifting in the way that it was. Hope that if it really, like, I hope it does well so that it can really like implement where it was truly intended to go, in a more just where it originally started out. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to say like going back is gonna be different, but we also don't know what that means yet. I'm just, like, I know relationship building with someone who's looking at school safety is really important. I also know that we don't have like a sub pool to pull from whenever we have someone that's has something happen and can't come in for that day. I'm just trying to be cognizant of all those things that are kind of factoring into there, while also appreciating the new way that we can do it and be very visual and where they need to be in moments where they're most needed. Okay, just wanted to put out there.
We'll have ongoing,
Okay.
and I think too that I hope we can talk about is what kind of data do we want in terms of knowing that this is making the kind of difference that we want to impact. I think there can be some new ways for us to measure the effectiveness of, again, what I call relationship building, modeling, support, being an extra hand, being a trained expertise set of eyes that can, help schools with routines and rituals that they might be struggling with their families. So, these are going to be extra resources we have that are all really committed to making sure that our schools are safe and our students and staff are experiencing, positive interactions.
I'm gonna look forward to hearing feedback on how this turns out and what it means to the different schools as well. They're also very different. Okay, that was my hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Saravo. You started asking questions at 8:30. It is now 8:35. Board Member Mosner Feltham, you started asking questions at 8:25 and ended at 8:29. We will now, Board Member Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. I hope this doesn't take that long, but I just wanna get clear. So Bob, last month at our April operations work group, you had presented a table that was similar to the kind of the rainbow chart that we saw tonight. It has rainbow colors. And in the last presentation, it included compensation step, the 2.63 inflation, and then a 16.766 FTE increase. Those things are still in, you just didn't present them tonight.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Okay, so of the revision, and then so that college career and community readiness, the grow your own to associates, that's still in,
Yes.
just not presented tonight.
Correct.
Okay, so around the unallocated pool, I appreciate tonight that you reduced that from last month, it was at 10. Tonight, we're seeing 5. And I do have to ask a question. Is 5 going to be enough? I mean, I don't know what the trend data is, but to go to 5 unallocated to start the beginning of the school year, I don't know that we've always needed 20.
Yep.
I thought the 20 to 10, which was the first proposal, seemed like a reasonable, thoughtful reduction. But to go to 5, I think I'm just wondering, like, are we being a little short-sighted there? And I don't mean you, Bob, meaning us, like if we were to approve that.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question, and I'll answer it this way. Starting 3 years ago, when we would budget 20 unallocated at the start of the year, when the year came to a close, we would back those 20 unallocated out of the base for teachers, right? When we were going away from ESSER and we didn't really know where our population was going, we have left the 20 unallocated in the base without backing them back out, and we added. When historically, we would add 20 in at the start of the year through unallocated if we need it, and then we would back those out. And then we begin the next year with 20, we'd add them, we'd back those out. But instead, we've left them in there. And so a combination of that, building a base, a combination of us staffing more of our classroom district-wide from the board optimum to the minimum, not the maximum. I believe we have in our base more staff than we've ever had to be within board policy. Now, would it be a little bit easier for me in terms of having 10 to, in an unallocated pool? Maybe, but I do think we're staffed well. I think if we say our enrollments are gonna be the same, we shouldn't need any more staff at all, right? We're staffed where we need to be policy wise right now. But we were looking for a balanced budget, and we had X amount of revenues and we needed to cut costs, but that was one of the ways we achieved the balanced budget for the total budget.
I think I'll add a few things to it. Our team has heard me say this many times, our kids don't come to us in groups of 15 or 22, or
Right.
they don't leave us in those size groups as well. None of the unallocated positions are hired right now, so we're always going to take a snapshot in September and make adjustments according, either by policy or because it's the right thing to do based on other factors. The one difference that we have right now that we don't have tonight is what our 26-27 outlook will be in terms of what was just described today as a 50% reimbursement rate in special education. By October or by September, that number will be firm. And if we would have to increase the number of unallocated or new positions at that time, we'll be able to bring that back to you in a budget revision.
So if we need them after the third Friday in September count, we can deal with that between then and the October budget vote, right?
Mhm.
We feel we well, we've had more than what we thought we were gonna have for student enrollments and class sizes at different schools, depending on actual enrollment on the third Friday of September. We have an opportunity then to the final budget to authorize more if we need it.
Does that have an impact though on hiring for the beginning of the school year? Or no?
It can.
Well, but these unallocated positions are determined at the time that they're determined to be needed.
So we've already hired them.
No,
No,
they're not how.
no, not the unallocated.
Okay.
Are we now what do we call them, substitute positions? Building-based subs,
Yeah,
that's different. Unallocated positions are FTE, not people. They're FTE that become people once we determine you're needed at Stevens, you're needed at Henderson. You know, a requisition is given and that position is hired.
okay. So you're saying that coming back after the third Friday count in September, if there's a need for more,
We would,
could increase it for the final October budget?
we would bring that to the board in terms of a revision at that time.
Okay. I'm gonna sit with that for a minute. And then the second thing I had about tonight was the safety and security. Again, I appreciate all the efforts to get us to a balance. To that, and the way that those, the way that those were described were that they would be out driving in the feeder patterns and then being responsive as things came up, right? So maybe you can do that with fewer than 9 staff, but how do you do that with 2 vehicles? Are people driving half a day and then swapping, or how are you imagining that we move that down to 2 vehicles?
No, there'll be a defined area, there'll be a priority call list or response list. This could be someone to go to a site where there's a crisis on hand to be extra hands-on. This could be, you know, we got a report that after school yesterday at this bus stop, you know, there was students unruly and, you know, that person might stop at that bus stop to start the morning. So this is a way for us to be flexible with how those individuals are going to be outside of a regular routine, where they may have a scheduled visit for a fire drill or for any number of things that might be happening at a campus.
Yes, thank you for reiterating that. I thought I recalled last month when it was presented as a priority project that there were more than 2 vehicles.
There were 4.
Right. 1 for each person assigned to a feeder pattern. So in tonight's proposal, what I'm saying is it's reduced down to 2
Correct.
vehicles. And so you're imagining that the geographical area will just be maybe 2 feeder
We
patterns.
could start east and west side. We could
I see.
out east, Memorial West. Now, you know, again, remember that the focus of all these individuals is truly going to be on, you know, middle schools that don't have 5 security assistants.
Okay.
And elementary schools that have no coverage, very little in terms of safety and security expertise. So it's a way to provide,
Yeah.
you know, that layer of support that we currently don't have.
Okay, yeah. And my questions might sound more interrogative than they probably intend to, but I'm just trying to track from last month to this month. Can I just ask, since the technology asks came in tonight, the MSCR one, Mary, seems pretty straightforward. I mean, the technology does as well in terms of what you described. But Bob, are you anticipating any other, and Scott, your building services, but Bob, are you anticipating any other kind of standard operating increases that would come in between tonight and next month?
I am not.
You're not? Okay, so you think this is pretty much captures it?
Or at least on my estimate is for sure. We went through a lot of this work.
Okay.
3 months.
Joe just said, hail damage.
What was that?
Joe reminded hail damage, right? We have extensive damage to our facilities. Where Scott and his team is working with our risk manager along with our insurance carriers. They're looking at the total damage.
Okay,
But likely not to happen until 26, 27.
That's right.
We were trying to explore whether we could move some of those costs into this fiscal year. That's unlikely to happen. So
mm,
that those are gonna be increased costs. We are gonna have to pay a few million,
2.5 million right now.
2.5 million.
Maybe.
okay. So we're anticipating maybe one more line item coming in around the insurance costs for the health.
Yeah,
For next year.
yeah,
for next year.
not between now.
This isn't,
Right.
this is for next year's budget.
Yeah, for the 26, 27 budget, but we won't know until for sure what we have to pay out from the insurance and
Oh.
what's gonna cover. So there may be between now and June, I don't know if we'll have a final answer. It will have to be reflected in the fall budget.
Okay, so it'd be more like an October budget. Okay,
And we'll talk about how we're gonna fund that one time, or the fund balance, or how we'll go about doing it.
okay,
I will also add, as we're getting through the assessments in our building, some of them are really bad as we see them. We will be doing some emergency consents. Cause we have
Mm.
starting to see leaks, and luckily we haven't had a lot of rain, like it's been helpful for us.
okay,
We can watch it, we're scared. But if we get a lot of rain, we could see more leaks show up, so we are actively, we're identifying them, we're trying to engage multiple roofing, you can imagine we have. Send the spreadsheet up right now. I got 14 potential buildings that have been affected. And some of them are total losses for roofs.
oh, wow,
We have 4-inch hail at Sandberg that had punched holes in the rubber bed. That's how hard it came down.
yeah,
And we have all the skylights at East, there's 20 skylights at East that are shattered. They're all duct taped together right now. So there's a lot of work our team's been trying to scramble. We can't. Insurance is out there just fine to get it.
Yeah.
It was citing, I mean, it's compounded, it's been a really headache for a lot of us, but we don't know the numbers, we're just. Sad, I want to say we're gonna have to act very quickly. Coming, so. You know, there's things that will come to you guys like, hey, we've got this, we have roofers that we know we trust, and they're part of our kind of portfolio, if they get time. We're gonna divert them versus kind of our maintenance project, now going to emergency repair project and replacing, so.
got it.
Luckily, insurance will have a part of that.
Yeah.
But it's $2.5 to $3 million. On top of 30 million roof repairs, we don't know the number yet.
Okay, thank you for highlighting that. So the only other thing that might be coming forward in October potentially would be maybe an unallocated. We don't know till we get into the next school year. Maybe we'll have a better number on this hail damage in insurance amount. And we'll have the study back on the salary compression and start to have some options before October
Yeah,
in June.
my expectation is we're
Okay.
gonna have the salary schedule study done in time for consideration of June.
Okay.
Budget.
Thank you.
That's what we've been planning. Just need to get some numbers.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Nichols. I want to say that I am tremendously proud of this budget and in support of this budget. I think that I see a lot of collaboration. I see us prioritizing the needs of our young people and our staffing model. I see us investing in our educators through steps and lanes. I am tremendously proud that this budget includes parental leave. I think that this is a hard, this is a hard economy to get to a balanced budget and to make these kinds of predictions. And I think that they demonstrate the values of the board and clear communication that we've had ongoing as we've engaged in this process since last October. I want to acknowledge that I think all of the board has advocated for salary compression, and I think that we voted in favor of the study. And I think that the reason we voted in favor of that study was not because we wanted to delay the ability to have this conversation, but because we wanted to have this conversation accurately and we wanted to do this well versus fast. And as a board member who's served for the last 7 years, I've seen us work very hard to keep compensation and invest in people appropriately in pretty rare and exceptional circumstances. And whether that is giving our hourly staff a $5 increase, or this year keeping the health insurance stable for the folks who are making the least, I think that we have brought an intersectional analysis to our approach to doing this work. And I want to thank you all for partnering with us in doing that. As far as the ability to incorporate paid parental leave, there was a reduction in the staffing needs related to that new benefit from 3 FTE to 2 FTE. I'm wondering if you all can speak to that decision.
It really was me after our last operations work group about the desire to have a balanced budget. And so I knew we needed to go back and visit with the department heads, and in this case, Jennifer Kendall and her team, to say, hey, I need to cut a couple of million from what we've talked about today to have a balanced budget. I know revenue at this point in time, and that we have state movement, but and I needed to put together a balanced budget. And so it was after talking with Jennifer, and I said, listen, it would really be good if you could try to do this the first year, see what kind of participation is. We had to make a lot of assumptions on how many staff would come in, how complicated would it be. And if we need more later, based on real experience, you can come back and put another budget together. Those are the kind of conversations I had with Director Morris and TJ, who supervises the security. And so that was really the result of it. He looking for areas where we need to cut back a little bit to get a balanced budget.
I really appreciate the work that goes into balancing our budget and the additional workload that creates for real people. I am hopeful that if paid parental leave needs additional support, that's communicated with us in order to make sure that this is something that's highly successful and truly benefits folks and is well communicated. I think the benefits of becoming the first district in the state to offer paid parental leave are profound and allow for us to influence the districts across our community to engage in supporting new parents and families in a way that is meaningful and has real material consequences. This is something that matters in relationship to people's health and wellness. It matters in terms of their ability to be present parents for their children. And I think it boosts our community's sense of wellness in relationship to what it means to be a parent. So recent research consistently shows that paid parental leave leads to better health outcomes for both parents and children. Families with access to this benefit experience lower rates of postpartum depression and increased child well-being. By investing in paid parental leave, our district contributes to the overall health of the community. We know, like anybody who has kids knows, like a child's first teachers are their parents. And so the academic benefits for this in the long run are something I'm excited to see and I think are tremendously meaningful. And I've heard my board colleagues discuss what it means to be invested in our young people from prenatal care to, throughout their entire lives, what it means to create lifelong learners. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. So I am overwhelmingly proud of this budget and in support of this budget. And I am grateful that the state is showing up late to the game, but nonetheless, it counts a lot. And I also want to emphasize that I think it's tremendously meaningful to have a state support public education in a way that does take pressure off of the local taxpayer. I think it is really hard to see all of your bills increase. And I think people are feeling that strain when they go to fill up their tank in the grocery store right now. And so knowing that we are engaging in a way that is thoughtful to the folks who are contributing to our district I think is deeply meaningful. Thank you so much for all of the work that went into this budget. And Board President Castro, I want to thank you for leading these conversations for us as a board up to this point. So I'm grateful for where we've arrived. If there are no other questions or feedback related to our preliminary budget, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second. All those in favor?